And I think we're all good.
Got it. Let me pull up the agenda here. Okay. So thank you for. Honestly, I haven't had a chance to look at that document, Rodney. But thank you for posting that.
Sure.
And how about you, Phil?
Which document are you referring to?
So actually, that was those documents for part of the policy committee meeting. We're actually at the executive committee meeting for the first 10 minutes, and then we'll roll into the steering committee. So it's executive committee, steering committee, and then the interview work group and the Choose for Tomorrow work group.
So for right now, I'm just kind of spectating. Y'all pay me no attention.
Okay, so let's see. Sorry about this. 1 second. Okay, so sorry about that. Yeah, priority of finding funding sources such as grants. So on that note, how do we determine like what we are going to pursue for grants? You know, like, can somebody just take the charge and do that? Or do we have to vote for that?
Well, right now there's nothing formal set up. Mary has reached out to me for the old files, the old donor list of donors and old and whatever grant related files I have. And it seems to me like she has an interest to take kind of pick that torch up.
Yeah.
So the council could, I mean, they could establish an ad hoc grants committee, or they could establish a grants work group, which maybe makes more sense, or whatever other approach they might decide to take.
Okay, and just as long as they, and let me get this straight. So just as long as they don't make decisions at the work group meetings, they can function as such, right?
Yes. Yeah, you're correct. As long as they don't make big decisions, or there aren't so many members that it could constitute a quorum. So 3 or 4 members would be fine.
Okay. So at the tree council meetings, I guess we should be presenting these funding options and then voting on whether we should pursue them or not. Or can we just say hell with it, and let everybody go for it?
Well, it could be either way. Like maybe the work group could make suggestions on grants to apply for, and then the council could vote yes or no. Or the council could, say we want to apply for this list of grants. It could be whatever approach seems to make the most sense.
And that does make sense. Interested parties would be doing a little research and therefore make a good presentation why or why not. So I think that's a good idea.
It's a thought. It might be worth just discussing at the council and asking what the council, kind of what they think might be a good way to approach it is.
Because, of course, and I can't remember when Nina is going on for sabbatical, but it's great to see the energetic dialogue between all the members now and funding the Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful grant and such.
Yes.
So that's great to see some traction building there.
Mhm. So I don't know if you would just have individuals who pick up the torch for one specific grant each year kind of thing, and then they just present it at a council meeting, or if you had a work group that sort of kept track of all that, which in some ways makes some sense. And I think Mary might kind of maybe do that. And then it's just less things to try to, someone's keeping track of that, and they just present it at the right time.
Okay.
Hi, this is Mary Attaway here. Are the work groups a subset of another committee, or is it just under the umbrella of the tree council in general?
They're directly connected to the tree council.
So they're not like a subset of
No.
another. Okay. I was thinking about the fundraising and like where it would fit, and if it seems like promotions is kind of working on it in some, but not on the big grant, right? So yeah, I think we're all trying to figure out the best way to organize it. And so I wondered if it should be under some subset, or if it's just something that we all, or if we had like a
Mary, it technically could be under a committee, but the thing is, if that existed that way, the committee would have to vote and keep minutes and then present it to the council. So it just creates like 2 layers of paperwork.
It defeats the purpose, really, of having a work group, I guess.
Where if they just report directly to the council, it's less paperwork, although that will take up more tree council time during the meetings.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Which is okay sometimes, right? But not when we have a lot going on. Okay.
Whereas a nice ad hoc group would be a pretty quick presentation, yes or no, right?
Right.
Got it. I like that idea.
But they can they bring action items for the council as a whole to vote on, like a committee would?
Any member can present an action. Any member can call a vote.
Right.
So
okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
They technically could through one of their members.
Right. Okay. If promotions, so do we have a fundraiser? Who is on the fundraising subcommittee? Do we have that going?
That doesn't exist.
No, that's not what you're talking about. Okay.
Well, no, it is what we're talking about, but it doesn't exist. It doesn't formally exist.
That's what we're working towards. Okay. Sorry, I came in late. Okay, that's great. Well, I was just wondering too, because I was working on some ideas for the individual fundraising, towards, I shouldn't say individuals, it would be businesses or individuals, but separate from grant writing. But it seems like somebody on that work group could be working on that aspect of it, and then other people would be working on the grants. As an idea, I don't know.
So we're technically, the executive committee time is lapsing at this point, and it's time to start the steering committee meeting.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I didn't mean to cut you off, Mary. What was your question again?
I was just wondering if for designated roles within this theoretical fundraising subgroup or work group, if we had some people working on grants and then some people keeping tabs on reaching out to corporations and individuals specifically. So it was more of a break. It's not so much a question, but just like a consideration, just since the promotions committee has had conversation about reaching out towards individuals.
Right.
That we incorporate that into it. And so it's not all just grant writing.
Right. Well, you could definitely do that. You could have a member from each committee showing up for the grants work group if they wanted to. It's really however people want to do it, truly.
Yeah. Okay. I just, or maybe it's, anyway. Okay, I'll let you continue. Go ahead. That's great.
Okay, so we are in the steering committee meeting, and it looks like we're, that the first topic is exactly what we just closed with. And that is the action item of present a motion to set up a grants work group. I don't know if Mary's still on here or not, but
I could put it into the, and give me some ideas on this. I could put it into the agenda as a discussion about, is there a kind of an approach that seems like it might work well for grants, whether it's a work group or an ad hoc committee, and just ask the council, or what do you think?
I think it's up for discussion, and I think the one consideration that I would like to consider in the discussion is maybe instead of just a grant writing group, it would be considered a fundraising group. And it may be that we want to limit it to just grant writing. I'm not sure, but that's what the point that I was getting at is just to, have a work group about all types of fundraising and not just grant writing.
I think so too. Like it, and not. Sure, I think that's a good idea. If, who knows? Like we may get back to selling trees again.
That makes a lot of sense.
And if we have an idea of somebody there that has an idea of what's coming in from specific people that we reach out to, that can just be just a part of the conversation. It shouldn't prohibit us from writing more, grant requests, but just so that we kind of have something where the entire picture of fundraising is being discussed.
Is there any reason to not just have this as part of to not create more committees? It kind of seems like they would work hand in hand together to actually get some of this done. They could certainly coordinate with, the education committee on some aspects of it, but just a thought. I mean, if it makes sense to have another subgroup or, working group, I understand, but just how I've seen it done in a few other organizations.
I'm not opposed to that. In fact, I did when I was talking to Mary Songster some about this, just in casual conversation, separate from the council. She was asking some questions to try and get caught up, and I asked her if she wanted to serve on the promotions committee too, since she was so interested in fundraising, since we had been working on the donation levels and that sort of thing. And so, but I don't know. I mean, the grant writing, I haven't done much with grant writing other than what I've seen by researching other websites of groups similar to ours. That's where I'm like seeing other grants. They have given me ideas of grants to apply for, but so I don't know.
So Mary has reached out to me and asked me to share files with previous donors and different, fundraising and grants connected to the CTC. So I'm definitely going to be sharing those with her. I expressed my concern to her and, making sure to keep me updated with any updated information so that information doesn't get lost over time. And she's more than happy to do that. So I think it's a good, I think that could work also.
You mean just having her be on the promotions and sort of serving that role through promotions?
It's a thought. I'll put that on the agenda as part of the discussion. Like, should it just be as part of the promotions committee?
Yeah. Since we will be, kind of updating the website with a lot of that type of information, it may make sense for that if she's sort of taking the lead. But because Nina's not on promotions, but she's instrumental in grants, and same with Stacy. And it's not to say that, but if it's kind of running through promotions, it's not to say that other people can't work on finding grants and working on grants, I guess. What are our thoughts about that? Because the people that have done the most of it so far aren't even on promotions. but that, I mean, I don't think it prohibits anybody from helping out with it or taking the lead on it. But I think that was the benefit of having the work group.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. I think, yeah, my only thought was just that other people can contribute, but that a good majority of the information coming out of that group, I also sort of jive with what promotions is doing as well. But yeah, it certainly wasn't to limit it to only people on the promotions group, more to keep from having 53 subcommittees, but that's about it.
Yeah. I see if we can stay organized, and if I sometimes am not confident that I understand our rules about, I know we need to keep things public. So if we have people emailing promotions about what they're working on, Rodney, is that okay? We're not supposed to be really communicating without it being a formal discussion.
So there technically any and all decisions made by the Tree Council and any of its committees need to be a part of the public record, where an agenda for the meeting was presented and minutes were taken of the meeting. Work groups don't necessarily have to make any decisions. All they have to do is carry out decisions already made by a committee or by the Tree Council. So as long as they don't make decisions, and they just carry out the work, it's a little bit of a workaround that helps us to streamline things.
If they technically agree on something and then bring it to the CTC during our regular monthly meeting, and then it's actually approved at that point, does that also kind of cover the bases?
Absolutely. And it might streamline it that way.
So there's the benefit of it not getting kind of bogging down promotions, I guess, or
right.
And then some different people could be on it.
The
It
downside,
would be helpful to have somebody on promotions that's on that work group, though, at least.
Right, exactly. So the downside to discussing that at the Tree Council meeting is it slows down the tree count. It takes up time with the council meetings.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could send out the information at the time, and if it's something that's not too contentious, it could just be brought there to make sure that the full CTC is affirming the decision that the subgroup made. I mean, that could be sent out with agenda stuff a few days ahead of time so people would have a chance to look at it.
Right. Yeah, that'll be key with people. Help limit the discussion a little bit.
I would say that this group does a much better job than just about any other group. Ones that make much bigger decisions in this county than this group does about, open records. Not that we should subvert any of the policies or anything like that, but this group goes above and beyond in that regard.
Okay. All right. So I think we have some things. I think we have some things to work with there. And just as summarization, we are going to present this to the board and whether or not we should establish a grants or fundraising working group, basically. And that's going to be put to discussion in our meeting. Is that a good summarization? Okay, got it. So next, what do the executive and committee chairs need to be putting on the agenda for the minutes? Now, Rodney, can you?
Yeah, just threw this in there. If there's any extra things that someone thinks they need to talk about, this is just an opportunity to throw something on the agenda.
Okay, got it. Okay, so I'm not great at this in getting my agendas to you, and this meeting I'm being much more deliberate on taking better notes during this meeting. So that's a big part of it on my part, is writing the stuff down as opposed to going by memory. So I don't know if you guys struggle with that or not, but Rodney, I appreciate you hanging in there and being tolerant of that. But I will commit and do a better job.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The main thing about that is twofold. The one is I'm under time constraints to get this out and get the meeting set up on time with everything that's required. And the other thing is, and you weren't the only one, Sean. Like it was every single chair. Nobody replied back to me, and so that added up to quite a few hours of extra time on my part to try to track people down and piece things together. So I'm not taking it personally, and I'm not upset about it, but I do need to say something in order to, establish some sort of protocol. And it's almost to the point where I feel like if someone doesn't get back with their agenda items, then maybe it shouldn't get put on the agenda.
Right. I think that's a fair assessment.
Are you talking about for these committee meetings? The agendas for this meeting today?
Yes.
Or for the council in general? Okay.
Well, for both. This steering committee technically helped set the agenda for the tree council meetings, but this last week in setting up this meeting, I just didn't get replies from anybody, and it really slowed the works down on my side.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of put me in a bad position because I have to get stuff out in a certain amount of time before it to comply with sunshine laws and for the Public Information Office to be able to set it up.
Okay, I think I got it to you on Wednesday morning, but that might have been past your deadline. Yeah, I apologize. Okay.
It came in on Thursday morning, and I did get it. And I do appreciate it.
Thursday. Okay. And you wanted it Wednesday. Yeah, I got it. All right.
Okay, I'll make that clear in the next meeting. A reminder. So tell me about your Rodney 5-minute forester section.
Yes, I would like to make a request to the steering committee to be allowed to have a 5-minute block of time, kind of an educational segment for the tree council, to be able to present information to the council that's coming. It could come either from the council secretary's perspective, or from the forester's perspective. And this would be to help engage in sort of a conversation or an educational discussion about some basic forestry concepts. And B, it would be a motivation for me to start developing materials and develop PowerPoints, which then I can then carry out into the communities, like different neighborhoods and that sort of thing.
That'd be great.
I really like that idea, and I think that's something that each member could really do. Like I know we have a varied background, and I'm not sure if everyone would feel comfortable in doing that, but to me, I think it's a good opportunity to say like what's going on in your world, kind of thing. I know Mark, you have material daily, so do I. Rodney, like you have a lot of interesting things going on as well. I like the day in the life of a community forester notion, really. And not to mention, of course, the educational component of it, which I think go hand in hand, really. But great idea.
So I guess I'll just look to you, Sean, for guidance on, if you guys get sick of hearing from me, like we'd rather hear from so-and-so, like just whoever's on post for the month kind of thing.
You could have Rod be the default if someone else has something to offer that month. Maybe they maybe some months someone else offers, but maybe more often than not, Rodney fills that portion of the meeting.
Right. I think so. And, you know, like I recognize things come up of interest. This is something that I guess we could put in, or we could or should put in the minutes meeting, like today, for example, right? Or at least have an idea of like what you plan on contributing, I guess, right?
I really do like the idea of a day in the life of everybody too. I think the more other people can share, the more we can all talk about kind of what our world looks like and what angle or what it is that we sort of add to the true community, the better. So I think that's a great idea.
And I don't know, what kind of time do you think this would be, like a 5 to 10 minute presentation?
So from just straight sort of basic forestry principles, I was envisioning 1 or 2 slides only.
Yeah.
So I was just envisioning super basic principles. You know, a forest grown tree versus an open grown tree. Maybe that's 1 month, and then the next month is, or, you know, and then leading into that's why we structurally prune. A real fast structural pruning, you know, outline one time, you know, just basic concepts that kind of helps ensure that we're kind of all able to have a conversation about what it is we're doing, and that on some level we're on the same page.
I could get us into the auditorium as opposed to that large conference room, which would have, you know, full video capability and everything, if that would make life a little bit easier.
That'd be great.
Hey Pam, how's it going?
I'm glad to be home. I've been at the mechanics all morning.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I was just going in for an oil change and tire rotation, and I ended up with new tires and a whole list of things that need to be done on my car.
And so I don't know, you probably didn't catch this, but so we're on the steering committee, and Rodney had the great idea of having a forester section of our CPC meeting where I guess am I wrong? It would kind of be an update on what you've been doing, maybe, and then just some quick topics of urban forestry, basically, things to look for, or you know, of being an arborist or tree care in general.
We could maybe even think about doing both, like a 1 5-minute segment from one member, kind of a day in the life segment, you know, and then another 5-minute segment, you know, just a 2 to 3 slide, real brief educational summary, you know, relating to some aspect of community trees.
I think it's a great idea. Once again, like to me, it's a jumping off point. You know, like we all share our interest and love for trees, but providing these different topics will, you know, like give you a different way to look at trees too. You know, like it all kind of makes sense to us, but you know, from the members who have a gardening background and you know, are kind of on the enthusiast end, to us is, you know, fully immersed in the industry. I think it would be a great opportunity to interact.
If I might jump in there, I agree that I think it's a great idea, and I think as our council, the base or the background of our council members broadens hopefully over time, and even has already, we shouldn't assume that we all have the same basic knowledge of tree biology and arborist functions and so forth. And it also, I've noticed just Well, something as simple as just going out and watering trees. You encounter the public while you're doing those sorts of things, and they have questions. And when we're planting trees, it would be really good to be able to provide a fairly unified base of knowledge to the citizens when we're out and about the not just about the importance of trees, but about how to go about properly planting a tree and so forth and so I see a great advantage to the educational aspect of it, not just for our own knowledge, but for our ability to then reach out to others within the community.
Good idea.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was thinking. With our social media, I think it would drastically help give me and other members of my committee ideas of things to update our social media with, that are directly applicable to what you do, Rodney, and what we do as a council. And we've all, the last year, those of us who've been on, it seems like have really been, or 2 years, trying to kind of catch up on what exactly, the programs are and, what we are doing. So I feel very motivated and a little bit like I understand things a little bit better and ready to share all that. But I think that's an awesome idea.
Do you have any idea who you'd like to put on point for a day in the life?
Like the first person to take that was your idea, dude.
Well, yeah, I don't.
Oh, yeah, totally, Rodney.
I'm happy to wait. I was thinking more in the lines of, just talking about the difference between a forest-grown tree and an open-grown tree.
We can just scan through Phil's Facebook posts. They're mostly about ecology and plants and trees.
Yeah.
And grandchildren and dogs.
Well, some of us are retired. A day in the life.
I know, I love it.
Just posting pictures and talking rants.
Awesome.
Rodney, a question about that, and well, for everyone, it would be simple in setting the agenda for each month's meeting to just have that segment named as such, Forester minute with the Forester, or a day in the life, or something like that. Do you envision, or do any of you envision needing to have more detailed information put in the agenda than that, or can that just be filled in sort of as we go along?
I think it could be filled in, probably.
Setting the agenda would be easier, it seems to me, if we just had a pat segment.
So should it be considering other people will be contributing? Do you think it should have a different name than a forester section?
Yeah, we could just call it an educational short or something like that.
Like that idea.
Yeah, I like the idea of the two different, comments from Rodney or comments from the forester, as well as the day in the life. It'd probably be good to just limit it to one, because I'm sure it's going to bring up a little bit of discussion. Someone's going to have some questions, and it's going to spark another 5 minutes of talking at a minimum. So might want to just consider the idea that, if we're doing this, we probably have to limit extra discussion. Anyone could always email that person afterwards, but that might make it easier if we just had the one and then we allowed a few minutes of discussion and just tried to cap it at that.
That's a great point, because we can get pretty far off track with that for sure.
We could even put it at the end of the meeting, so that way, if it gets bumped, that's, it's not a big deal.
Okay. Okay, cool. That's I think it's a great, I hate to say it, but like our meetings sometimes are boring. Sorry. But I think it would be a good opportunity to liven it up a little bit and at least, inspire some thought. But anyway, anything else, guys? It looks like we're pretty close to the interview committee.
So we're technically now an interview work group.
Got it, right. Right.
I'll see some of you later. Otherwise, have a great day, guys.
Thanks, you too. Yeah, so there was discussion as to, like, how do we appoint, how do we figure out, I think politely we asked, or we planned on asking if you're interested in stuff. That's probably the best we can do, right?
Yeah, so as of right now, it's Sean, it's you and I and Edith and Jim expressed interest.
Okay, right, cool. And I guess maybe they'll be chiming in.
I just kind of threw this in here because we're in that transition between, an ad hoc committee and a work group. And so, I mean, there's a list of things that need to be done, right? So all the tree council has to say is, yes, we need you to make sure to get some nominees, find us some nominees, so we can keep our membership filled. And that could be an agenda item, and then the work group can just make it happen.
Yeah. And the agenda item would be, the people are already assigned, or and
Yep.
me, Rodney, Edith, and Jim. But I guess assign the duties of, we have a couple, 2 to 3 different avenues, like in the radio station, the social media, and then the website, which I'm super excited about, by the way. That I think even further legitimizes our who we are. I think.
They did an awesome job. They're doing great work with that.
Isn't that great?
So, I don't even think we need to bring a motion to the committee to the council, because the council already made a motion to, I think we can assume that the council wants, to find members to replace its membership, because it already voted to establish the ad hoc committee, and the work group just replaces the function of that ad hoc committee. I don't know if anyone would really need that clarification.
Right. Okay. So we can, amongst us, assign who's taking what, I guess, right?
Yeah, we can communicate by email or phone or whatever works to, get stuff going and make something happen.
Okay.
Rodney, Sean, as time goes by, I'm assuming that these standard media outlets like UGA and Flagpole and Public Information and so forth, that you'll develop some sort of, or you may already have some sort of stock announcements where you'll just fill in the dates, the numbers needed, the deadlines, and that sort of thing, so that over time it'll become a fairly simple and not a drawn out process for someone, correct?
Yes, in fact, I think some of that already exists, but it might need to be updated a little bit.
Good. curious about the redevelopment of interview questions. That's just a thought to make the questions apply to a more current envisioning of the council and its activities.
Yes, from the last round of interviews, the questions were a little bit awkward in the way they kind of affected the flow of the interview, and there were suggestions that there could be, different questions or better questions or some work done to make that a better process.
Okay.
So I guess what we've established is I can meet or at least reach out to you, Rodney. You, Edith, and Jim, and assigning who's doing what, right? And got it. Okay. And how about and we by email can present different ideas for both the ad, I guess, and then interview questions. Okay.
Yep.
Rodney, is there a chance that you could email out the current interview questionnaire?
Yes, I'll dig into see what we have as far as verbiage for advertisements. I know there is something, and also I can send out the interview questions for people to take a look at and see if they can't be reworked.
Okay, cool.
So I just send it out to our four members in the work group right now.
Sounds great. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely do that.
Anything else, guys? We're running a little ahead of time. Anybody need to take a break for a second? I guess that'd be a good opportunity. Well, just off the top of your head, I am interested in a few of those, the old questions or the current questions, like you mentioned that there was some awkwardness there. Is it just like the going around the room? Can you help or be specific there?
If I remember right, they were slightly redundant, and it's like the order they were asked in didn't quite make sense. They were the old interview questions. I just grabbed the materials that were already there, stuff that had been used before, and it was just pointed out that it kind of just it was just kind of disrupted the flow of the interview, really.
I was going to say, they just don't follow in a way that makes sense from an interview standpoint.
Yeah.
But, every interview is different too, so you're not going to have them all be the same.
What do you think about some more organized piece of information that's provided to the potential interviewees prior to their coming to the meeting? I feel like we spend a fair amount of time talking to them about what the role of the council is and what different tasks we do and so forth and so on like that, and maybe even how the council is organized when really you would think that someone who's applying for a position would do a lot of that already, and that would have informed whether they actually did apply or not. So it might be that we are in some ways wasting our time or the interviewees' time by letting them come in kind of and learn about the council once they get there and decide, man, that's not what I thought it was.
Right. Well, that's a good point.
Is that
Yeah, I mean, a couple of the questions seemed geared towards seeing if they know the mission and anything about, the bylaws. Most interviewees don't, so maybe they just are asked to read that material in advance in preparation for the interview.
Well, even things as simple as we ask them, how many hours a month would you be available to
Right.
So, I'm not even sure they know that we meet once a month formally and that it's for X number of hours and you're obligated to be on a committee. So, those kinds of things, I guess you could take it too far and just scare everyone away. But at the same time, it seems like you could deal with some of that before they ever even arrived.
Right.
It seems like you could put a lot of that onto an application form.
Right. Yeah. This isn't the FBI. Like they could, they'd be prepped. Like I like that idea, and a little more. We are a legitimate organization, and we have to adhere to certain, whatever. But I like that idea because like considering they are. I mean, a lot of these people are going in line. Like with especially with our agency website. And of course, we get a lot of referrals from current members or past members, whatever. But yeah, it's kind of like seems like a cool thing to be part of, kind of a comment, that's recurring. So,
well, potentially that could sort of inform the modification of the questions, the interview questions that are being asked. If you sat down with the old interview questions and took that information and just wove it into here's kind of what's expected of members of the council as far as their participation, time, involvement, and so forth and so on, that would help you winnow out some of these awkward interview questions that seem to jump around, perhaps. Just
I think so. Like the hourly question, like I can see how that can be daunting or turn off the new. But like if it was more like just like Phil said, like what your time involvement consists of, and that would be, of course, details, that monthly meeting in addition to the committee meeting. And our expectation is that you are involved, or at least on a committee in some way. We're, of course, like someday we'll be involved in hands-on, in-person events, hopefully.
It could be that by doing it the way we've done it in the past, we've set ourselves up for with some of these folks who come in for interviews who sort of felt that they'd already kind of agreed to do it and are uncomfortable in backing out once they find out more about what's involved or that it doesn't match up with their life or whatever. So it seems like a well-informed group of interviewees would perhaps create a more successful group of council members once we get them.
So as far as the application, I don't think that will work well because it's a stock application for all of the ACC councils and committees. But it'd be easy enough to put it on a letter requesting an interview. And just say in preparation, these are the expectations, and in preparation, please read these two documents. And then ask if they're still interested in interviewing.
Exactly.
Great idea, Phil. All right, swiftly moving on to the things for tomorrow work group.
So I do need to just talk about one thing. I think it's really important to express, and it may be important to express this in the free council meeting. I found some documents, basically from the mayor and commission, that approves the tree council to donate trees for planting on Athens-Clarke County property. The reason that's important is because technically every single donation to the county has to be first approved by the county manager. So having that agreement in place is really critical for being able to do ongoing tree planting on any of the county property. And that's what the Trees for Tomorrow program is established for. And I do apologize for taking so long to find this information. I had to unbury it. It was buried pretty deep.
I'm glad you found it.
And so, just to recap, you say any planting on public property has to be approved by the county manager, right?
Well, it technically would have before, but I can find the documents, but the mayor and commission approved the Trees for Tomorrow program as a way of being able to engage in ongoing planting projects on Athens-Clarke County properties. So that eliminates the need to ask for permission every single specific time.
Yeah.
So we kind of have to keep the Trees for Tomorrow going if we want to bypass that.
Yes.
Okay, well, that sounds like a pretty good argument for keeping it going. If we change the format of how it's structured, do we have to get a new approval?
No, it's specifically for, in fact, if it would help, I can produce those documents. I can send them all to all you or to the entire tree council or whatever you would like, so everybody can look at that.
Yeah, I'd like to see them for sure.
Okay. I'll send it to everybody in the Trees for Tomorrow, and then you guys can decide if you want to send them out further to everybody else.
Okay. Do you remember what the date was for this? It's been around for a long time.
Yeah, let me find it. Just keep talking, I'll find it and maybe throw it up on the screen.
Because, I mean, it seems to predate anybody that's on the council now.
Yes.
Had a lot of turnover, so that's not surprising. Are the housing developments considered county property or federal property?
Well, I thought they were, but Mary said not, so I don't know. I guess not.
Because we don't have to go back and get things approved if they don't follow. I mean, everything fell under Trees for Tomorrow pretty much, or the grants.
Yeah, I mean, I put them in. I mean, I put them in as landmark trees because they were planted for Arbor Day anyway. So I think
Okay. I was going to say, if we have to go back and get all those approved retroactively, that'll be a pain.
Yeah, no, I don't think we need to.
Okay.
I'm going to be stepping out for a little bit. I think we adjourned the interview group, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll see you, Rodney, at 3 o'clock.
Okay, I'll just find that and send it out to all of you, and you can decide where you would like to put that. But if it's okay, I'll put it in under the work group to at least explain that to the tree council.
Sounds great.
Are you still as a lead in this, Phil, for the Trees for Tomorrow? Are you still the lead in the Trees for Tomorrow?
Phil, you're muted.
I just unmuted.
I'm sorry.
Now you're muted again.
I got him. I got him.
Okay.
You're
Am I
good.
okay now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, it's a lot to keep up with. I'm sorry. A question about the donations. Now, to broaden this to the whole council and not just the Trees for Tomorrow program, I'm assuming that if someone were to donate funds to the council, like a private donation, and it was not earmarked for planting of trees, I don't know, maybe it was for education or for publishing brochures or something, then that would be outside of this tree planting caveat, which has been built into the not having to go to the mayor and commission. So this is not going to take care of all of our problems. If we're legalistic about this, it sounds like
Well, that doesn't matter though, because the tree council is its own nonprofit. So it's fine to donate to the tree council itself. But if the tree council plants a tree on county property, it's technically a donation to the county.
Okay, I understand. Good. I'm trying to make sure that we're not making our lives more complicated than we need to. It seems like everywhere we turn, it happens, but no point in doing it on purpose, right?
Right.
Okay, we have some other things on this list for today, in addition to that mayor and commission agreement, and just the little bullet points are Firefly Trail, Dog Park, and finding a memorial grove. Now, Rodney, what did you have in mind when you listed Firefly Trail and Dog? Just talking about the status of those projects?
Well, those are just items of business for the work group. So the Firefly Trail has a bank has a certain amount of funds that it's obligated to plant on the Firefly Trail.
Right.
Someone unmuted that. I'm getting a lot of feedback and just noise. I'm going to mute myself as I can when I don't have the floor. Try that.
So that's why that's on there. Like there's some new sections that have been built and there's some opportunities to plant a few more trees. The dog park has been this ongoing sort of conversation within the tree council that I think just adopted it into Trees for Tomorrow. And, under the Trees for Tomorrow page, it's going to get built. If they just put a dog park, an option to donate for the dog park, that seems, as people plant, donate enough money to plant a tree, like every year you just plant a couple trees there or whatever. One of the issues is planting inside the fence as opposed to planting outside the fence. So planting inside the fence could be done easily enough. It's just going to cost a whole lot more money because you have to set up some protection fencing or some boulders or something to protect the tree. But you could talk about that on the webpage and make that sort of explicit. And then a memorial grove, the question is, do we want to look into finding a site for a new memorial grove?
And when we call it a memorial grove, does that by definition change its purpose from these other, like say from the dog park? If you see what I mean, a memorial grove is to memorialize a person or an event of some sort, I guess. Mm-hmm. But it looks like people could contribute to the plantings at the dog park or the Firefly Trail or somewhere else in a similar fashion. So yes. I see the need to find more places to plant trees so that we have options as we move along. Right now, we have opportunities because of the not the Made in the Shade grant, not the schools, but because of the housing authority, we've got an open place to plant, and I'm guessing that we will not exhaust our places that we could plant trees with the $5,000 that we have now. So to me, it takes a little of the pressure off of trying to find a memorial grove right away. since we've got places, we have planning opportunities now.
Okay, well, let's just defer that for now. It's time to let the promotions committee have their meeting.
Okay.
But I'll just kind of defer that conversation for now.
Thanks, Rodney.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody, it's Mary. Rodney, before you sign off, can I kind of continue that discussion to lead into what we would talk about on promotions? So if we were to say something on the donations page or our current projects page about, you know, don't we have a feeling that we didn't want to suggest that people even give to a particular grove just in case we didn't raise enough money to actually get that done? So my point is, if we were to say you could donate toward the dog park, then Pam would earmark a certain amount of that, you know, that donation would be earmarked for the dog park, and we would have to kind of hold it aside until we had enough money to actually justify us trying to move forward on that, right? I mean, is that something we want to put out there to the public, that we want, that they have the ability, they can choose where their money goes? I know we're not talking about specific trees, but
Well, no,
that's
a great question, Mary. I think the council sort of decided that, you know, as long as there's enough money to plant one tree, then just go ahead and plant one tree and don't worry about it. Don't try to plant the whole thing all at once. Just set it up as a placeholder where people can plant trees, and then when you can plant a tree, go ahead and plop it in the ground, you know, kind of a thing.
Yeah, so if they do want to contribute to a particular grove, we can encourage that. If they, you know, so that opens up the conversation a little bit. Like if they would prefer to plant a tree at the dog park versus Broad Acres or something like that.
Right. Now, the thing that the complication I can see in that is if we have to start managing a whole bunch of different sort of earmarks or accounts, you know?
I know, yeah.
So, you know, maybe that's followed with a qualifier, like, you know, we're looking for donations for this, you know, but once the grove's filled, it may be used to plant trees elsewhere or something like that.
I know, and as we work on the wording for the website, it's going to be really important that I have my understanding, and Jesse does, of you know, that we get that right on how we actually plan to move forward and turn this money into action, and how we decide which place we're going to tackle first before we make any promises, you know, to people in their donations. Like this, we will gladly accept that, but we may not get to it this fall or winter, you know. Hopefully we will.
It could match up. Yeah, exactly. Like you can only plant during the winter, and you would have to explain that and qualify it that way. But this, you know, kind of keeping track maybe is doable, especially if you want to give people credit on each, you know, link for each grove or whatever, or each project, you know, where you put down the donors' names. Like you've already got a record of sorts anyway. I don't know. It's just a thought.
Yeah. And that could be a shareable spreadsheet for Pam to use as well, like who gave what amount of money. And you know, that would be a common document, I think, that we would use, that she could use to keep track of who gave what, and we could use to keep track of who gave what in terms of giving them credit on the website.
It really is a complication and could be tricky, and I just don't know how that would be resolved. So that would be one of the things that would probably have to be discussed and figured out, you know, and decided if.
You think as a committee, as a council as a whole? As
a committee, maybe even as a council of a whole. It just. Yeah. How do you keep track, and how do we keep from making this so complicated that, you know, it becomes unmanageable? And that's always it's easy to have great ideas, and it's easy to grow into, take a life of its own and grow into something very complex. So that's the balance, right?
You know, honestly.
Yeah, I think it would be worth talking about that at the next meeting. Go ahead, Phil. Sorry.
I was just going to say it could get really complicated, particularly if you're embedding in this some rather time-sensitive projects like the planting at Broad Acres, where if it's not done by the end of this coming planting season, then a person would no longer functionally be making a contribution to a planting there unless there was a new grant the next year. So it might be that more functional categories, if you have to earmark contributions or donations at all, that they just be to ongoing tree planting projects in Athens-Clarke County, administered by the CTC or something like that.
Or maybe just to the two accounts we currently have, Trees for Tomorrow and the Community Tree Council, period. Maybe that's a better approach.
Right. It's a very broad division of contributions. And you're also, Mary, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've got these different levels of donation. And the idea there was that they were not earmarking them at all, other than it was a donation to the Tree Council of a particular.
Yeah, I mean, that's
amount.
the idea. I think it's not, I mean, you know, we can decide if we want to say anything about it on the website, but if we do, if somebody does look at our project and does make a specific request that their money, that would be different than us saying, you know, you may give for this, or this. But if we do have a special request, we could maybe discuss it and see if we could honor that, especially if it's in the early fall and we know that we need money to finish that, you know. I don't know. But anyway,
I agree that we could make things more complicated for ourselves by encouraging these partitionings of donations rather than just dealing with one if we get a special request. That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can flesh that out as we. Some of this, you know, we'll have to adapt as we go, and we'll see what kind of response we get from the public, and if it's an issue or not. It may just not be an issue. But if we end up getting a lot of requests for specific things, hopefully that donor will respond to. It's going to go to any one of these upcoming projects, you know, and that will be sufficient. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think Phil makes a good point. I'm kind of thinking like if we're a restaurant, you know, and we didn't have a menu, and when somebody comes in and we tell them, we'll make whatever you want, you know. But if we have a menu of sorts, you know, you can donate this much for this project or whatever. Keep it within a framework that people can, you know, see and understand easily. I think that's to our benefit. It'll take a lot more load off our plate. No pun intended.
At the different donation levels, we could just put a description in that says, you know, if you donate $500, it'll plant 2 trees or whatever, you know, and then at like the $25 level, say it, you know, goes toward the planting of a seedling, or, you know,
or the printing of 100 brochures for distribution in schools or whatever.
Right.
Some series
just some examples. Yeah, I think that's motivating. And maybe we just field the questions as they come for, can I donate to a specific group? We'll just have to cross that bridge when we come to it. And I think that a normal person would find it sufficient if you were to say, we have raised this much money for these 2 projects, and we're really trying to get them done this winter. This is where the money's going right now. And it should suffice. I mean, everybody's doing this because they want trees in the ground. So, anyway, but there are abnormal people out there, as we all know. Anyway, okay, are we ready for promotions? I'm sorry that I'm not on computer. I am on my phone, and I am not able to see who's with us. I'm curious so it sounds like Phil and Jesse and Joe are here, and Tori emailed me and told me she did have court, but she thought she'd be done in time to catch some of this. And is Mary Songster showing up today? Maybe not.
She's not here now.
Okay, and we did email some, and I did mention to her that she just was asking, and Jesse was on those emails too, asking questions, kind of trying to figure out a little bit more about what we're doing with promotions. And I suggested that, and she's very interested in fundraising, as we were talking about on our executive committee meeting earlier at noon. And we were wondering, and Jesse, I'm telling you this to get you up to speed, and Phil, I can't remember if you were on that or not. Yeah, you would have been on that. So we're making a work group for grant writing. And there was some discussion about maybe this should be not just for grant writing, but for fundraising in general, because that would incorporate, you know, the private donors or business donors in the conversation when that work group got together. And the idea of having a work group instead of a separate committee or making this all part of promotions is that a work group can get together and get stuff done without having to be on YouTube and recorded. And they can't exactly vote on things, but they can work on things and bring things to the council for discussion. And I like the idea. I think it streamlines things. I think an issue with making all the fundraising under the umbrella of promotions is that we have a lot of people on the council that have been working on this that are not on promotions, like Nina and Mark. And so by having that work group, it's kind of like you can incorporate more people that are on the council that are not just in the promotions. But I do think somebody on promotions should be in that work group. And so it's kind of shaping up. I could imagine who this work group would be, even though it hasn't been decided. But I'm just knowing the people that have already been working on grant writing.
I think that's a great idea. I've had that idea myself, just in thinking about the amount of grant writing that we do, and that it kind of falls on you know, random people. But if we have a dedicated work group, I think work groups is going to be our workaround in this COVID. You know, it's kind of less regulated.
Yeah, this is like we're having to jump through a lot of hoops and do things.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I
so
think it's a great idea.
I think it's great. The one drawback we seem to have is that because they can't make decisions, they would end up bringing more discussion to the council as a whole, and that could just take some time. But I think another thing that came up in that executive meeting, for all of you that were there, you already know this, but was that we need to get better about submitting our agendas in a timely fashion to Rodney, and making sure that everybody reads the agendas before the meeting, and that would hopefully cut back on some just kind of free-form discussion about whatever the work group's been working on. But what if they have decisions that need to be made, they have to bring it to the full council. But I think fundraising is going to be a big part of what we're talking about anyway for the next couple of months. So it would be a worthwhile discussion if they did take up a lot of the time, you know. So anyway, that's not on our agenda, but that was a good part of the discussion. So Jesse, you want to talk about what other things you want to get done on the website? I think that was our first item.
It's really hard for me to work in this format, so I don't really know what the best way to go about this is.
So, well, remind us what few little, you know, annoying things you wanted to tweak on the website, and maybe how we could help you.
So one of the things. Sorry. My scanner. One of the things that I need help with is the language on the projects we are working on and our past projects. So I just need, like, if that's already written somewhere, I don't want to have to rewrite it, because that's the thing that kind of takes the most time on the website is writing everything and making sure that it conveys what we want it to convey, but also that it's legal. I mean, not like official, you know, it says the right thing. And so having it already written would be very, very helpful. So that's
Oh,
one
I
of the
think,
biggest
yeah.
components that's missing currently.
On
if-
what page? Like all the pages, or are you talking about one specific?
So there's 2 pages that are that kind of have. So there's 2 different areas. There's one, and let me share my screen, and I think that would be easier. Or Mary, can you even see if I share my screen?
Let me see. I'm parked now. I have to take my daughter to the orthodontist. I'm so sorry. So that's why we're on the road.
No worries. No worries.
But I am waiting for her at her school. I think I can open it up. I may have to disconnect for a second. Let me open my email. But go ahead and talk.
Jesse, one thing you may do is Stacy Farrell has a lot of that compiled from just writing previous grants. So you may reach out to her to get some of those statistics. You know, so many trees were planted. We had 47 volunteers, and it was done on this day. That kind of thing.
Yeah, that would be really helpful. So there's 2 places. So like what we do, I think would be a good place for like our annual programs, like the Arbor Day event, and just kind of a broad description of some of the things that we do regularly, MLK Day, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of a placeholder, what we've achieved. That would, we can put some of those statistics like you're talking about, Joe, in that area. And then there's also another area, and this is all under the About section. There's another area for projects. So one could be like a detailed list of like all that we've accomplished, and one could be just a general overview of the ongoing things.
Mm-hmm.
Or we could compile it all into one. It doesn't really matter.
Did we have a historian step up? Was that Mary Songster was going to do that with Rodney? That might.
Tori was supposed to, I
Tori.
think. Yeah.
Tori, that's right. So that might be a good thing for y'all to work on together too, because if she's compiling that information, then she can give it to you as well.
Yeah, so that's I can't really do anything until I have that, so I'm kind of waiting on her.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, I don't know, what do you guys think about this header picture?
I think it's cool.
You like it? Mary, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Is that the one of the tree that owns itself, or the
Yeah.
one left that's broad acres?
It's the tree that owns itself. I don't.
And it has the stone.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of the base of the tree than of
Exactly.
the canopy.
Yeah.
So if I do the canopy, you can't tell it's the tree that owns itself. But if I do the base, you don't see the canopy.
I think though visually, you've got gray on the bottom half and green on the top half. I think that conveys canopy.
Yeah.
The logo's got canopy. I think it works well, honestly.
Okay.
I think it's cool too.
Okay. As long as you guys like it.
I love it.
I think that it's.
Yeah.
I think it's nice because it's. Things done. It's very Athens. It can very much conveys where we are.
Definitely.
Yeah. What do you think about our logo on that page? I did look at it the other day, and I wondered if that needed to be bigger.
I could make that bigger. Let's see.
And I don't feel
where it is.
Really strongly. I don't know. I just thought I'd mention it and see what y'all thought. And then in that same regard, so I don't forget, I think that we have to decide. Rodney's playing around with our logos on these agenda and minutes and stuff. I wonder if we should, come up with a decision of which logos we want to use for what and let him know.
It's a good idea.
I don't particularly care which one. I think they're both awesome. I think, you know.
So we've got the one that's super wide that's on the front page, and then we've also got just the leaf that says Athens.
Yeah.
Council.
Yeah,
would
so I
think
went ahead and did the, go ahead.
Maybe for the official letterhead, we use the one that has our full name, Athens-Clarke County Community Tree Council.
Yeah, and I kind of felt like that one should be used for the minutes and everything, like a letterhead for what Rodney's sending out.
Agree.
And then the Oakley, and I think he likes it better because it has the full name and
it tucks away nicely too at the top of the page. The other one's kind of taller.
Yeah.
I did use the smaller logo up here. It's kind of squished. Do you see where my cursor is?
Mm-hmm.
You can't really tell, but it's the oak leaf. I might try to use the other one where that we used on Facebook, where the text is actually on top of the leaf. It might not squish the leaf as much.
Mm-hmm. That's a good idea.
And then I can put it other places on the page too, like down here with this subscribe, or like down here in this box. I can sprinkle the other logo. Kind of? What's that?
As a bullet, kind of, or like like a bullet point, or before text kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. I can use it like other places throughout the page so that it's still people identify it with us.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Like I can put it like right here, like above the about.
That'd be perfect. That would look awesome.
Yeah. Okay. I'll do that.
Cool.
And that one is our Facebook icon, correct? Like our Facebook. It's more of a square shape.
Profile picture.
Yeah.
And Instagram, and they're up. So I feel good about that, and I think another thing that we talked about on that executive committee meeting we just had, that Rodney wanted to start doing each committee member during the council meeting, each council member do a 5-minute, like a day in the life of, what one of us does, and then he was going to do a little educate, or the person that was speaking do some sort of educational aspect of something that they do or know about that relates to the tree council. And I think that would be pretty cool. That would give us more information, just stuff to put on social media. Sorry, I'm all over the place.
Like a bio.
Okay. So like during the meeting?
Yeah, I know. Like we have all this extra time. But I love the idea, because I do feel like there are council members that I don't fully know and don't fully know what they do. And there are council members that don't know a lot about forestry, and maybe they could find ways to relate something about what they do to the council as a whole. He's just sort of, and he's like, it could be the last thing on the agenda in case we run out of time. So
I think it's a great idea, but we never have enough time for all the things we talk about.
Like one member does it each meeting, or like everybody does it?
Yeah, one member.
That would take the whole meeting.
No, just you. And so we're not even going to get through. We have a lot of members too. I mean, we're not even going to get through all the meetings before, and some people aren't going to have an opportunity to do it. One person per meeting, and not everybody during each meeting. Yeah.
What about the biography stuff that we did? Could that tie into that somehow? Maybe have them.
That would be neat.
Like self-submit.
And that should.
And then we can put it on our webpage. Like each member, you click on their picture, and then the biography comes up.
Well, that's it's in the works. I just haven't finished it yet. So if you go
worries. I know your
if you go to council members under the about section. Hang on. Sorry, I gotta go back. That is
You have
the,
the big
lar-
stuff.
that's as large as the logo will go. Unfortunately, Mary, it has limits on it. So if you go to council members,
Yeah, there you go.
there you are.
Yeah, I
So
think
there will
that's a
be
good.
a bio here. I just haven't finished on this. Hopefully I'll have this done by the next meeting so everybody can see it. But
That would be better for
My
our.
job, I'm remembering that I was, and I don't know, I did a couple, but I was going to take those forms, and maybe I did them. Did I do them? But I was going to put them in sort of a small paragraph form for you,
yeah,
so that you could just paste them onto the website. But I can't even
Maybe-
remember.
maybe
if
that's why I
finished doing
didn't
that.
finish. Maybe that's why I didn't finish this portion of the website.
Oh, good. I'm glad that we're talking about this, because I will go back and see. I remember doing some, but I don't know that I did them all. But that should be helpful to you, right? If you just had a document
Mm-hmm.
with a little paragraph that you could copy and paste.
That'd be great. Yeah, you may have
And then-
done that.
I think I did some, but then we have new members now too. We need to send them that form,
Mhm.
and I can
Well,
do that too.
I was gonna say too, the other thing is, like, there's not really room to put everything that was on that form on here. We could use some of that stuff on the social media as like a, hey, meet this council person. They,
Yes.
like Great Pyrenees and raise them in their spare time, or what, like whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think we had talked about
there
that
somebody
too.
that does
Yeah,
that?
doing a little spotlight, like a member spotlight on our social media. And I think
Yes.
we just folks weren't real forthright in getting their bios back to us, and I think it kind of petered out. But maybe if we send some reminders, and especially the new members too, we can probably have a good amount of information that we'll have a good chunk of it, at least to get started
Yeah,
on the bios.
I think we have most of the old members. I need to finish mine. But
Mary.
but I also think we just didn't do anything on social media at all because we really felt like we wanted to have the logo. So we're ready to roll now. All right. Well, maybe. What if we had a schedule for that? Like and I'm willing to take that on. I know, Joe, you're on several committees, and but if I were to do that, what do we say? Every other week? Is that realistic or too much? Or
I think that's fair.
I think we should do it, or more than I could even do it once a week, but
I think especially
we could
if we have
intersperse.
some already.
Yeah.
We could start with like Phil. We've got all his stuff, and then I think maybe once the members start seeing that there's member spotlights, then maybe they'll have some incentive to get their information in.
So I'll put on my list to get that started and send that form to the new members, and see who else hasn't completed it, and send it again, and start put one up this week. That would be good. Okay. And Jesse, where do we stand now? The PayPal link is up there?
Yep, it's active. If you click on donate, if you click on any of these, it'll take you eventually. I think Co is using all my bandwidth. It'll take you to the place to donate.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. I do think that we should have. This is so slow. I think we should have a description of some sort underneath the different donation levels. That's
so like what
thing.
it could pay for?
I'd like to see that. And they might be willing to donate more if it was like, if you donate $250, it will plant one tree, you know? Whereas if you
Yeah.
plant $100, it might
Yeah.
purchase some saplings, but it's not going to plant a tree, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Maybe you could. Would it be too much work if you click on $50 and then it gives a list of like different ways we'd use $50?
Do we even have that answer? I don't even know.
We don't know, but we could come up with some stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And part of what I
think,
want to put on our agenda today, another thing is like some promotional materials. And I think I should hook up with Mark on this because I think he's doing some brochures for education. But,
Okay.
you know, that ties into like, you know, our promotion, note cards and stickers. We wanted to get some stickers or magnets and pencils made. And that, if I, you know, I can get a real answer to that in terms of what those things actually cost. But like, I guess we need to do that homework anyway, but I don't have a clue as to what. And it's hard because right now we're saying $700 for one tree,
Yeah.
which is so much.
that is so
I mean,
much.
that's just even hard to admit, you know? And
Well,
I know
I
there are going to
almost
be
feel
people
like-
out there like, what? I'll get you a 3-gallon tree. Let's put it in the ground, you know?
Well, maybe we
It's
could
just
say
$700
$500 plants a tree because the $700 includes the maintenance afterwards.
That's
So maybe
true.
we say the $500 covers the cost of putting a tree in the ground, and then
we could say, yeah.
But that also is not, you know, I think a lot of times when people think about planting trees, they think about like a sapling, like a teeny tiny little tree that you just quickly throw in the ground. But like a $500 planting is going to be a balled and burlapped, like established tree. That's not just
Mhm. That's right. Yeah.
I guess, you know, my point in that is that I almost, people are going to want to know that their money's going towards planting a tree. And if it's too far out of reach, it's almost like, you know, it sure would be nice if we actually were buying some smaller trees, but I mean, we're not.
Well,
you know, because it would be nice
know-
to say like, this would buy saplings, but we just don't
Yeah.
ever buy saplings.
if I can jump in here, you could break it down even further, and you could,
Mm-hmm.
with your $200 listing or whatever that category is, I've lost it on my screen now, but
I stopped sharing.
That-
Sorry.
that would be to maintain a recently planted tree for the first year to establish it or whatever, watering,
Mm-hmm.
That's a
structural
great
pruning.
idea.
I mean, you can do things like that. You can use the 500 for planting a 2-inch, 3-inch balled and burlapped canopy tree, cover tree, or there
Mhm.
you could get around that $700. That
Yeah.
was designed to just help be a guide to people for what they plant. If you're going to be breaking it down, donations down into different ways that they would contribute to the council, then 700 goes out the window, in my opinion.
That's a great
know.
idea. That's a great idea.
And
Phil.
then there's also the caging or gator bags or
Yes.
you know, steaks and caging, like $25. Besides a gator bag, right? I think gator bags are bags
That's
are
right.
like
Closer to
$30.
50.
Right. Like for
That's
the
about
$100 level, we could say purchases 4 gator bags to help water newly established trees.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Well,
that's appealing.
And hopefully at some
Um,
point we'll be saying things like we'll buy 100 feet of in-ground irrigation to maintain
Ooh.
trees, or those kinds of things.
That's Phil's motivation. Our resident
Absolutely,
tree
my garden
I
hoses are
bet.
getting worn
You have been
thin.
amazing. I mean, amazing in watering these trees for us. So yeah. Okay. Well, I'm feeling better about that. I was starting to think that like I didn't want to share because it might be too depressing But there are some valuable things that lesser amounts would help cover.
Definitely.
Okay,
I like
so,
that idea a lot.
I can brainstorm that as well. All right, I'm trying to take some notes and parked again. Okay, let me look at the agenda. I've lost my agenda here. So we talked about bios. Joe, I saw your emails about the carbon offset.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounded like they would like a donation to use that on our website. Did you hear back from them yet again about specifics?
I kind of left it at that. It sounds like
So
the owner of the code is the developer of the code is Davey Tree Expert Company, which is a massive tree care company. And yeah, I think, just like you said, it sounds like it may require a donation to the Davey Tree Expert Fund in order to get it. I wanted to bring that to the table and maybe put it to a vote today if we want to find out how much that is, and then we'd have to bring it to the council to vote once we know the amount.
Yeah.
The other option,
I guess there's no harm in asking how much they want, but if it's substantial, then we might could get away with putting a lot of information about carbon offset on that page without having an actual calculator. Is it something
Jesse
we want
and
to
I
kick
talked
down the
about
road a
that.
little bit?
Yeah. So the
Okay.
stuff we shared on social media, that kind of like nutrition facts looking table, I mean, we could certainly link that, and
That's
then
good,
just
yeah.
have the link to the iTree, which would be the next best thing. That's kind of, if, just like you said, if it costs a whole boatload of money, we could probably get away with just putting the link and then kind of screenshot some of the features of it. And then I think that'd be a good workaround. But yeah, if y'all want me to, I can certainly reach out and
I think it's worth finding out how much it would cost. I mean, I would hope that the Davy people would maybe cut a deal for a tree council.
Right.
That we're not looking to profit off of this information. We're providing it as a resource,
Exactly. Yeah.
And I would maybe highlight that in the email or phone call to them, that we're not really, we're just trying to provide valuable tree information to our community.
Okay, cool. I like that. I'll reach out and figure out what the next step is to try and find out the cost and see if that's available to us. I guess the other thing is, if they send us like a bunch of code, do we know how to? Okay.
Code I can work with, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure, I don't want us to pay a bunch of money for something we aren't able to use. But okay, that's perfect. That's awesome. Because I don't know the first thing about
it. Wouldn't stop us. Yeah, me neither, Jesse. That's awesome.
Yeah, rock star.
Well, in college, I had a website to blog on that I just built myself, and I didn't know how to use any of the fancy programs, so I just coded it all instead. Nice. And taught myself how to do. I had lots of free time.
Nice.
That's awesome.
And that is why you are our webmaster.
Webmaster.
Yep, it's official.
I guess so.
So I think, regardless, though, we can have a page about carbon offset. That we could be. Do we have that already?
No, it's not there currently because I just don't have anything to put on there. But once we figure out what's going on with the iTree stuff, it'll be simple. It won't take long for me to just add that in. I'll put in my notes to add a page for it.
Yeah, just like an educational. And I think that, like, if I were to reach out, like I've got my sites on some company, like. Joe's company, TSAV, they all travel all the time. They are on the road. And, if I were to hit them up for some money, I could direct them to that page on our website. And I think that, I think that's going to be a really attractive way for people to feel less guilty about being on the road. All the carbon. Nobody's flying right now, though.
That's right. Yeah.
Although I
think-
hear you
don't-
can for very cheap.
Yeah, that's true.
All right.
And I don't think we necessarily
then-
need to restrict it to carbon. There's, I think the iTree will tell you, carbon. It'll tell you about, I don't know, like how much refrigerant use is mitigated through shade and how much stormwater runoff is mitigated through the canopies absorbing stormwater. So it can be.
I think it'll also
beneficial.
tell you like the value of the trees, not value in terms of like monetary cost, like monetarily, but value of the trees on your personal property. Like
The
how
cost
much
savings. Yeah.
the cost
Exactly.
savings. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That is
It's pretty
so
neat.
great.
It's pretty
I think
cool.
that would be neat to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely pursue how much that would cost.
If you want, this may be getting deep into the weeds, but I wrote my thesis on, the summary of kind of like not just, so there's the monetary savings and then there's kind of like the psychological benefits that people get from, there's all these studies about people who recover faster in hospitals with views to trees and,
Joe,
students.
I asked you for a blog post the other day. You've been holding out on me. That's exactly. And you're like, oh, on cranes. I'll write on cranes.
No, he's saving it for the council. Not.
It didn't cross my mind till just now.
That's so interesting. I love that. And we posted some of that on social media, when there was that story on NPR about just urban, violence, not only depression, but just, crime in areas that were more shady. And then I think that is just, yeah. So that all could kind of fall under some benefits of trees page, maybe, or I don't know. The title wouldn't necessarily be carbon offset, but
Yeah, what do you think that page should be called? So like up at the top, it's
value of trees or
benefits of trees. Yeah.
It's gonna have to be like one word in order to kind of fit with what else we have. So it could be like benefits or education.
Or no, because that's got that whole other, association with it, with what we're doing. I think, like the education committee.
Right.
But the value of trees or tree benefits, could it be 2 words?
I think I could work with 2 words, like tree benefits.
I like that.
Okay, something like
Okay.
that. Maybe
I'll try
play
that.
around with that.
I'll,
Great.
Jesse, I'll send you a PDF link. I think it's in the University of Georgia library system or something, but you can flip through and just grab a paragraph out of that thesis wherever you want.
No, I'm gonna need you to rewrite your thesis as a blog post.
Hey, that thing's locked in a safe, and it is never getting cracked open again.
I'm gonna need you to modernize it to the current climate.
But yeah, there's a lot of cool snippets in there that we could probably use.
Yeah.
So.
That sounds great.
Awesome. Cool.
All right. What else is on our agenda? Is that it for now?
No, let's see. There was so I know we brought this up at the council, but I would like to make this an action item if you guys want to pursue it, to buy a few of those prints of the tree that owns itself.
I support that.
Yep.
Okay, and then just because I am bad about floating ideas in these council meetings, and I just can't, when I'm like already communicated with the artist and he's given me his price and he's waiting to hear back, and then we start talking and nobody else realizes that I've kind of gotten that far with it, and then we start throwing out other ideas of ways we could, and it's like we need to, if we're that far, I need to get better at just kind of streamlining and saying, are we ready to vote on this? So he's offering 9x12 prints at $12 a piece. When we were talking about getting a whole lot of them, he knocked the price down, but now he's back to $12 a piece. How many do you think I should buy this first go round? Just like 20?
I would say not very many because they're going to be at the upper price level, and I don't anticipate having like a mad rush of $1,000 donations. Yeah.
Are there different sizes of the print that are available? Maybe we could do like 2 really big ones and then like 10 small ones.
There are different sizes. I'll
Maybe
email y'all when
like,
this is over.
If you give $1,000, you get a big print. If you give like $200, you get a small print. Something like that.
Let me log into Etsy and see. His name is
even
Seth
like
McWhorter.
a note card or something, you know, like. I'm going to have some stickers made with our logo on it too that we could include at the like lower price level.
Cool.
And I'll just personally pay for those. I don't mind. I don't want to have to like vote on it. It's really like such a negligible expense.
Hold on, but I know that we will also want pencils and thank you notes. And we could wrap all that in with brochures and stuff that education's talking about.
How about, what if we framed it instead of saying like, can we spend X amount on these prints? What if we framed it like the promotions committee would like approval to spend X amount of money on promotional items to include as gifts? And that would give us kind of like the freedom to just have stuff on hand instead of designating it specifically, and then we wouldn't have to vote on each individual tiny item.
I like that. Just give us a small working budget for prizes.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
And like all of that, we'll submit receipts. What's that?
I do think that this sketch from this artist, who may be different than all the other promotional stuff with a logo, or it can be included in that. But the check would be, I don't know. Or you just want clearance to spend the money?
I think if we get clearance to spend the money, then we wouldn't have to vote on each, like, we want $50 to buy pencils, you know, like, and then we could use it to buy these prints, but we could also buy some pencils and some stickers and some other things to include, because I don't remember how many giving levels there were. There were like 8, you know, and we're probably going to want to have something for each one of them. I don't want to have to bring it to the council every time we decide on what to give at each level.
Yeah. Right.
Like $350 for a promotions budget. Promotional supplies and prizes.
Okay, so maybe hold on. Let me suggest that we do some pricing.
Okay.
And then the three of us, I don't know if we're allowed. I think we can call each other. We're not really allowed to email. Ronnie, I need to ask them again. But I know. Okay, so let me tell you. There's 6. We could get 6 by 8 inch sketches, or 9 by 12. And I think it was at $12 and at $10. So there's not a big difference between the two. So there you go for that. So let's say if they, you know, and so if we got 10 at $12, that would be $120. And then the only reason why I'm saying let's wait is this: I wonder what Mark's timeline is, and if he finds somebody to, or is that different? Is that different than, where would you get your stickers, Jesse? And could you get pencils too?
They don't do pencils, but they do really high quality stickers.
Okay, and are they like for your car or like outdoor stickers? Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome. And then we could also throw those in with a thank you note for various things. Like we should get a lot of those if they're not, you know. And you could buy them or you could get them at a certain donation level.
Yeah, what I was thinking, like the $5,000, like the White Oak, the grand giving level, like they could have a print and a sapling and a sticker and a pencil and recognition on our website, you know? Like they get all the things, you know?
This is exactly what I wanted to talk about, yes.
We wouldn't have to necessarily come up with like something unique at that giving level. We could just give them all the things and they get recognition, like their logo or their name or whatever on our website saying thank you.
Right.
And a shout out on social media.
What's the next lowest? Is it 1,000 below that or 2,500?
2,500 loblolly is the next one.
So do you think that they should get a print anything 1,000 and over?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
2,500
right.
and okay.
Yeah.
Okay. $1,000 bucks.
All right, so let's try to get enough money to get stickers and pencils and these prints. So the prints would be about $120. That would be $120 if we got 10. And then if you figure out how much you need on stickers, I'll be sure to put in my email to Rodney for the next agenda that we want to vote on whatever amount the three of us come up with.
Sounds good.
So for 100 stickers, it would be 50. Well, hold on. For like a 3x3 sticker, for 100, it'd be $83.
Okay.
We probably would.
So
We could probably start with 50. So I'd budget like $65 for stickers.
So yeah, $200 or $250 would get us plenty of prints and stickers. So that's back to Joe's suggestion, which that would be just about right. And we could find some pencils.
Yeah.
I like it.
I don't know why we're stuck on pencils. We just did pencils last time.
Now, do we want to make?
Do
we want to do pens instead of pencils? Because pencils are made out of wood, and wood comes from trees.
I mean, who uses pencils? Yeah. Yeah, pens are great, and I kind of like the idea of magnets too, but refrigerators aren't necessarily the stainless steel fridges don't hold magnets anymore. I like colored pens. Oh, my 13-year-old says colored pens. Now you're getting fancy. A lot of kids would like buy them to take those. Oh yeah, like different colors. Yes. Okay, we'll consider it, but it will say Athens Tree Council on it. Okay.
Yeah, I can look into the cost of some of those things and let you know before the next meeting, and then we could propose a lump, $200, $250, something like that for these promotional items.
Yeah, that sounds like a right-on number for the first go-round. We can always order more next time.
Definitely.
Okay. Oh, good. I'm excited about that, you guys. Okay, and now it's about to be the end of our meeting. I will send you guys the fundraising letter, and that's it. I guess the next, between us, I don't think this needs to be voted on, but so we'll say at 2,500 you get also, I think you should get a seedling and a print, and then at 1,000 you just get a print.
I like it.
I agree.
Or maybe you just get a seedling, but we have very limited seedlings.
I think a print.
Maybe at 2,500 you get a smaller print
and a seedling.
Mm-hmm.
And a seedling.
Okay. Okay, and so I could reach out just after we vote on this. We could decide how to best. Maybe we could get 10 of the smaller and 5 of the larger.
Cool.
You know. Great. That's great, you guys. So we're waiting. Tori dropped off a flash drive to Rodney. He was going to download all the trees for tomorrow, files on it, and she was picking it up this afternoon. They called you. It's your turn. Bye. I'll be right here. Sorry. And they were going to, she's going to start sorting through and organize the timeline for you to put on the website, Jesse. That was the last thing, but she hadn't joined us. So. Okay, awesome. Thanks.
Hey, Mary, I know I'm not on this committee, and I did get your email. I haven't had a chance to look at that for editing, but it's on my list.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Sidebar. Be on our committee?
No, I have other plans.
Okay.
I'm fully supportive. I'm trying to get on policy.
Awesome.
But
Okay,
trust me, I'll help us get money somehow.
We did. Well, I think there's going to be a fundraising work group, which is going to be.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer. I'm in a fundraising work group. That's good.
Okay,
but,
great.
Yeah, but I have mastermind plans on policy.
And we
Good
have
luck.
somebody that'll be from promotions on fundraising, so that'll be great. Okay.
Well, I'd rather follow y'all's lead than meddle. So you tell me what to do, and I'll get it done.
Okay, thank you. Workhorse. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot. We'll talk
Bye,
to you later.
Mary.
All right, so Jesse, I'm
Bye.
gonna get you that PDF, and then I'll go ahead and email the Davy group, see what they say.
Okay. Don't email them from your Nuff account.
Yes, we'd like some code for altruistic purposes.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
Cool. See ya.
Bye, Mary. It's good to see you briefly.
See you, Mary.
Hi, Mary.
Nice background. That looks super relaxing.
That's where I was at yesterday.
Oh, God, I'm jealous.
It hit my butt. It was 2,000 feet and 2 miles.
Oh, I was here yesterday.
Hello, everybody.
Hi there.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good.
Good. I'm jealous of your background. I know how to do it on Zoom, but I don't know how to do it on this WebEx thing. How'd you do that? I want to do it.
I clicked on it. There's a way to download the file. This is Raven Point up on
Nice.
So I guess we're ready to go ahead and start a policy committee meeting. And hold on a second. Basically on the agenda for today, kind of talking about this is basically in the context of legitimacy, justice, and effectiveness. And excuse me. In being able to elicit feedback and community engagement in, as part of the data collection or assessment process for deciding what is wanted and why for tree policy or tree ordinance.
Can
So,
I, Rodney, I have a desire to be on this committee, but
right.
don't know anything about where you guys have been. And just in reading the minutes and the group discussions, I am confused a little bit as to why we're talking about changes to the tree ordinance without having a master planting plan in place. first?
Yeah, so I appreciate that question. I actually am sort of, in some ways, this discussion is kind of going in that direction, just based on the materials I've kind of sent out today. Essentially, about, I don't know, probably in October, November, the policy committee sort of reformed, and there was a commissioner involved in the conversation who wanted to implement a policy change quite quickly. And the policy committee sort of slowed that down, like quite quickly. I mean, within like 30 days.
Is that Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Yes, sorry.
And the idea was to change the single family residential exemption to require single family properties to maintain a minimum amount of canopy coverage.
So that, I mean, as good an idea as that might be, without data, I mean, without any data, we don't know if that's useful. You know, I mean, we would need the tree canopy data first and the plan data first before we know that is useful to ask.
Well, that was kind of the exact point that I made during those meetings. And anyone else, feel free to jump in wherever you feel needed. So instead of just going there right away, based on the inexperience of the policy committee, we decided to just focus on updating the tree species list, which we did, and doing some basic editing updates to the tree ordinance, which essentially embodied updating the best management practices to reflect the current literature, which we have done. And that, and Mark may know more, I believe is being sent to the Planning Commission to be approved this month. Next month, okay. So
Yeah, planning happen this month. It'll be on it's on the September agenda.
okay, thank you. So those basic edits will be going through, but it's being worked into the Planning Commission's timing for their agenda. So
is the effort then, are we still trying to move forward with that commissioner's request, or are we now backing up and talking about master planning to then better aid any changes or revisions? Where are we?
So the commissioner withdrew his request. And so what we've been doing is discussing possible ordinance changes. And the way that has been framed is, as a committee, what do you think is needed and why? That was the question.
Yeah. So again, I would say like that we would back further up and make sure we know what information we have, you know, before, because if we do the asking of what we want, I'm not sure I would know what I want until I saw the data of what, you know, the master plan would be and what the data of what we have and how that plays out in single family. I mean, do we have the data on single family zoning, which is 90% of our zoning?
So
the canopies.
So once again, you make an excellent point, and that's really kind of exactly where we're at. I also am uncomfortable with backing anything up without having some data behind it. And so one form of data easily can be what, you know, people want. Like you can record that information. At the last policy meeting, we just sent out I just had everybody take 5 minutes and answer that question. What do you want and why? And it was kind of an exercise. I felt like it was a pretty good exercise. And then the idea is that could be taken to the tree council, the same question asked of all the tree council members, and then formulated into a data set.
So
there's a
sorry
couple.
to press. So I was going to say, like you, I have participated in many a charrette, and I've put dots on lots of things.
Yes.
And I do find it to be, you know, a good sort of pulse taking within the community. But having done, I don't know, however many Mark has put out there, 50, that everybody I mean, we know everybody wants sidewalks, everyone wants good lighting, everyone wants good policing, everyone wants trees. So asking what they want before we have a picture of what we want to plan, again, seems like we can almost know what the answers we're going to get. I know what answers I would give. I want street trees, I want parks, I want a pocket park, you'll get that all day long, but until we know what we can offer, I don't know why we're asking the question.
I think that's a very good point, and I agree. I very much agree. I've been kind of wrestling. So one of the things I've brought up within this policy committee is, where does the concept of a strategic master plan come into place? Is the policy committee the place to talk about this? We haven't really discussed that too much, although I did basically in preparing today's agenda, sort of start kind of presenting some of that. I sent out some background information. I searched through, I have a file, it's 460 megabytes of information. It's a folder. It has 410 files in it, and I sent out some basically historic information on the process that was embarked on to create the tree ordinance to begin with, which I think is very enlightening. And I sent it out for people to take a look at. Has other people had a chance to look at that today? Any thoughts on that?
Didn't get a chance to look at all of it. It was interesting. The stakeholders, I think it was, I don't know, 10 or 12. A lot of them, I don't know, are still in Athens. I mean, Sean Hogan was the builder, so he's still around. But some of the designers, I think, have moved on. Developer, anyways. But yeah, I'd like to read. It was like 20 pages, so I need a minute to.
It is. It's 20 pages, and it's only a very small sample of what was involved. And I'll talk about that after Lee talks for a second. Lee, you're up.
Hey, Rodney, joined in late, and I guess we're talking about plant a tree canopy.
What's that? Well, no, we're kind of getting Mary up to speed. She's interested in becoming part of the policy committee. So we're bringing her up to speed on where we are in the process.
Gotcha. Okay. Talked about a tree before, and now we don't really have one, and maybe you could different cities that I don't think I've actually remind me of some cities that have that you
Joe, your volume's kind of cutting in and out. It's hard to hear you. Maybe just a little closer to the mic, maybe.
Let's see what we can do.
So did you have some thoughts on this background information, Lee?
It is, some thoughts are that, oh my gosh, what are we getting ourselves into? I mean, I know it's a lot of work, and oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, we should take this to the larger committee and ask them if they are prepared to undergo what we're going to have to do. I mean, I want them to know as well as us knowing within the committee what this is all going to involve, because this is going to be a long process, and it's going to be very involved, and it's going to create a lot of conflict. And those are my thoughts.
Thank you for that. So, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we were getting some feedback there just from people not being muted. I noticed that WebEx is having more and more trouble unless almost everyone's muted, just for a point. But I wanted to try and address a little bit of Mary's question and even throw something back to her as well. When we started looking at things to address, we sort of took it from the perspective of some of the folks on our committee who have seen issues. So issues I've seen as the arborist, issues Joseph and Joe Perloff saw from the development side. And then Russell Edwards brought in the single family issue quite heavily. He attended more of our policy subcommittee meetings than he did our full CTC meetings, which is perfectly fine. But he was just sort of hammering that home. And that was in reference to a handful of redevelopment, housing redevelopment issues that occurred in 5 Points, which is where Russell is the commissioner for. I would say his stance on it was a pretty heavy swing of the pendulum back in the direction of regulation because of a few small projects there. And I think the commission as a whole, or excuse me, the policy committee as a group kind of saw the idea that some protections on single family zones might put single family zones a little bit more on the same level as the commercial zones where we have the tree management plan. That concept definitely makes sense to me. And the fact that we have so much of our conserved canopy on single family zones makes a lot of sense. But when it comes to individual lots or individual builds or individual renovations, it gets to be a harder issue. And if someone needs to take down that one nice tree to be able to have an addition on their house where it'll actually fit and work and make the house function, it becomes really problematic to tell a homeowner they can't do that to have an addition. And then the other component is, how far do we go into a full-scale tree management plan? It's reasonably arduous, I would say, for me to keep up with the 50 or 60 that we have going on. And out of the 50 or 60 out of a year that we get, you know, I don't know, 10 to 20 of those actually go into building. So keeping up with that's a bit of a task. And I'm not saying we couldn't make room for those things to happen, but those are some of the both sides of the issues we saw that brought about some of the changes we had discussed. And while I totally agree with you on the data side of things, I think it would be good to look at what kind of data is available versus what we would actually need. Getting data on the single family houses just to discuss whether or not we wanted some corresponding conserved canopy requirements on them would be a heck of a lot of data to gather, just to kind of get one small regulation tweaked a little bit. And that was really one of the humongous sticking points of the original code. And so that's why it was left out. It was just left out just for the whole idea that this thing would never get passed if we had to show up to every meeting and defend single family conserved canopy standards. So that's just a little bit of the background I have. So I agree with you if we've got data, but we need to be serious about how we can actually gather that data if we're going to try and use that. And then my last point about all this in general, to Lee's point there at the end, is I think it would be a big endeavor, and this definitely would, involve public input comments, which are going to get the whole range of folks out there for and against. And it is, public input is gathered in a fairly poor way. To your point, Mary, you've shown up and put dots on many different projects, and it doesn't always seem to have much of an impact. So I think keeping those things in mind is a good idea, but at the same time, we wouldn't be reinventing the wheel. They really started from nothing when they came up with the code. So they went through years of process on all that. I don't know that we'd be at that level of strife and discussion. So I think it's just a few things to keep in mind. I don't have any answers here. I'm just pointing out some of the issues we've sort of discussed just to kind of keep the conversation going.
Thank you, Mark. And I would like to clarify.
I do agree about gathering all the data, Mark, and that, especially for something, but Rodney had mentioned early on about just getting funding for GIS information for mapping for a master canopy plan. And that's probably enough information to go off, because I think that the ordinances always probably need to be addressed and tweaked. But I am a proponent of editing versus editing as well as adding. That only adding, if we start talking about private property trees, you want to talk about people getting upset, that's going to be so that is a non-starter, private property trees. But if we can craft it with knowledge, and it doesn't have to be all the data about private property, but the overall community canopy thing, I think we'd be much more successful and less frustrated with making a good ordinance that the community can grow with. So,
I think it's important to distinguish the difference between a tree management plan, which is an ordinance process of evaluating single developments. Is that correct, Mark? And the difference between creating a strategic community forest management plan, which is, this would be like a 20-year goal setting process that could align with the ACC comprehensive plan. So those are two completely different things. Just to frame it, I look at tree ordinance as a way to make changes to the community forest in the private sector over time. That's the tree ordinance. The code is a tool that can be utilized to affect these changes. On the public side, public trees, you can talk at it from a strategic management plan where they have direct control over the management of those public trees. So maybe it's important to communicate that distinction. That's the way I see it. And when I look at the past documents, it looks to me that's the way it was framed from the beginning. And that is one of the conventions in urban forestry to utilize those different processes to affect change over time. So there are three things that I've asked the policy committee to consider in moving any policy changes forward. And those three things are the concepts of legitimacy, justice, and effectiveness. And legitimacy is really answering the question, do citizens have a good reason to follow the code? Do they have a good reason to follow the ordinance? Because if they don't, they may not. Justice is asking the question, is this fair? What has the representational process or the democratic deliberative process been like? Has everybody had a seat at the table? That's what that question is asking. And then the last one, effectiveness, is the question that asks, is making a code change the best way for somebody to achieve their, for whatever group of people to achieve their goal? Will changing the ordinance be effective? And so I kind of added to the questionnaire that we talked about last time, the real basic sort of deliberative process. What do you want and why? I realized that when I asked the question last week, that most people in the policy committee answered it from a policy perspective, but I actually answered it from a strategic management perspective. And those are really two different things. So what I did is I kind of backtracked and I put both of those questions on a questionnaire, asked the same set of questions from those two different points of view, which could be a basis for beginning to elicit community feedback. I sent out this document. It's just this background information, and in it there's this is basically guiding principles, objectives, and strategies in creating a tree ordinance. And when I looked through it, it was very interesting to me in that it sort of automatically sent at least the logic in the thinking process through to this consideration for long-term management. So in some ways, these guiding principles is a type of a long-term document. It's saying these are the things we want, and some of the things they want is for it to align with the comprehensive plan. So in some ways, this is almost like an initial set of goals that someone could lay down for a long-term management plan, which I found extraordinarily interesting. And then it talks about some of these separate issues, and the single-family residential issues are included in there. I don't know if anyone else saw that kind of saw that pattern pop up when you looked at it. So what I was kind of thinking for an agenda for today is, and maybe we need to backtrack on this conversation, is do we want to move forward with asking this basic set of questions of all the tree council members and establishing it as an initial data set? So I'll just throw that out there as a question.
I do want to pursue this. I mean, if that's what you're asking, I do want to do this. I know it's going to be difficult and heart-wrenching at times, but I do want to do this.
I have to throw out, go ahead, Sean. You're muted, Sean.
I think it's something with his headphones.
I think it would be a good idea to put it out to the tree council initially. I think it'd be valuable input, considering our varied background.
What would be the next step? Would you put it out to some industry folks or some other smaller subset, or would you just eventually get it all the way out to the community? And what kind of format or expectations would be involved with that?
So I need to just present my hesitation for leading this process. I may not be the right person to be the chair to lead this process, because in my job, I'm not allowed to be political, and by its nature, this is political. I can assist with data collection. I can participate on the policy committee, but as soon as something gets presented to the mayor and commission, I just don't know if I'm the right person. So, maybe we need to think about if someone else is interested in being the chair of this policy committee, that it may be a better fit and it may function a little better moving forward. I just want to throw that out, that hesitation I have about it. As far as moving forward, I think some of the tasks that really need to be done is visiting the original stakeholder list and compiling a new and fresh stakeholder list. I think that's critical. The stakeholders really aren't the same as citizen feedback, but it's a critical aspect of it. One of the things I think that the process in developing the ordinance may have fallen short on was eliciting direct citizen feedback. And that goes into the social justice question. I think they did a fine job in putting this together, and it was an enormous amount of work for them. When I look at the documents, there were 16 drafts of the tree ordinance. There were 6 drafts before they came up with a final version, and then 9 more drafts before they were able to produce the tree ordinance. It was an enormous amount of work. It was a monumentous undertaking, and it was backed by the city manager and the landscape management administrator. And I don't think if it was backed by those 2 people that it wouldn't have moved forward as well as it did. So it currently doesn't have that same backing.
So Rodney, to be clear, or Mark, whoever can clear this up, to this point, the direction this had been going was to modify the single family zoning component of the tree ordinance. It wasn't about the ordinance for commercial builds, or, because when you talk about getting community input, we have a tremendous number of renters, and a renter's experience and interaction with the tree canopy is very different than a homeowner's interaction and experience with the property's canopies. And so those are really not parallel things, but both important in the community, of course. But I just didn't know, that's a sidebar. What we were talking about wasn't commercial adjustment, like the plantings for commercial buildings or parking lot issues or street trees. This had come up as a specific request to look at single family zoning. Is that true?
So the single family residential question is just one of about half a dozen that are on the table as possibilities. one of them is, was the question, could incentives be, provided, for stormwater fees, in exchange for tree canopy or something like that. All of these things are just questions on the table, but there's nothing backing them up other than the conversations that have happened within this in this committee. So we're really at the point of just trying to formulate truly what is wanted and why. We don't know by who, we don't know how widespread, we don't really know any of that other than the opinions of the people within this committee. So it's really, all of that is in its genesis. And in my prospect to the committee was to, let's, instead of just focusing within our own immediate opinions, let's start taking this a little bit further and asking other groups and develop a methodology for formulating these questions. And so the question, what do you want and why, was like our first sort of, it was just an exercise, to kind of get people thinking about what this might look like. Because like Lee said, it is huge, and it really, in so many ways, is beyond the capacity of this committee to do. It would require several other committees, the mayor and commission, the city manager, and a lot of feedback from a lot of people. So if this committee decides it wants to move forward with any of these questions or any of these issues for policy change, it really needs to consider that big picture first. So we're sort of in this educational phase of kind of formulating what that might look like. You're muted, Mary.
With that understanding, I do agree that we should present this for the whole tree commission. And that's essentially like, what is our mission with the commission and community? So in that sense, we might spend our time refining the questions to get more information that we can directly use for the process. Then the general questions, I don't think will be as useful. So we may spend some time crafting really good questions.
So questions have been crafted in the past. You actually, by asking a highly generalized question, have the ability to then, if you get a large enough data set, to break it into categories and show where the majority of opinions lie, and have this ability also to see what some of the outliers are. So it can become data in that sense, but it could be somewhat subjective to whoever's determining what the categories are. But in that way, there is some power in that approach. I would urge you not to just discount that immediately, because the questions themselves can basically introduce bias into the whole process. So it sounds like people feel like it's a pretty good idea if we go ahead and ask the rest of the tree council this set of questions. And I am proposing to break it into two separate parts, right? Well, on the one side, it's the policy question. On the other side, it's the strategic management question. Ask that of the tree council, and then formulate that into a small data set, set it up with some pie graphs, and show what that could look like as an option for eliciting information. It doesn't commit us to doing anything. It's just a kind of getting the, greasing the wheels and getting the gears spinning a little bit, if that works for everybody. Okay, so I'll go ahead and do that. You think it's all right to send this out by email to everybody and just have them reply to it? Okay. So then the next part of the agenda for this policy meeting is considering who we might elicit feedback from. And so I put down three different categories. The one being producing a stakeholder list by first looking at who the original stakeholders were and formulating the tree ordinance. Most of the people on there are no longer around, but it's a good basis. So like the Federation of Homeowners Associations, I think is a great one to have on the list. So we start engaging the community at the stakeholder level that with these groups that they're associations of groups, which I think makes a lot of sense. And then are there any other community groups that need to be considered? Like maybe gardening clubs, or I don't even know. And then finally, how would we develop a process, an effective process that would elicit citizen feedback? One that doesn't introduce bias and one that doesn't get bogged down in a total quagmire, like yelling sessions. Where there's
I'm not trying to be negative, but in past information gathering and past threats, I do think the Federation of Neighborhood Associations and garden clubs is useful, but that is a real narrow window of homeowners and properties that are owned. The Federation of Neighborhood Associations, for example, like nothing on Hancock is a neighborhood association. There's not an East Side neighborhood association. And so it has these real obvious holes. And I'm not saying we don't use them, but we also need to fill those holes of the community that has never been represented in those groups and the garden clubs and that. And they are great resources, but they are the voice that we would hear easily. I again, like Mark, I don't necessarily have the answer. It's something I always work with in the other groups is, but be thinking towards other voices, and everyone right now is trying to find those other voices. So maybe somebody else out there has tapped into something, but keep that in mind.
Yes, I really couldn't agree more. I really would love to hear from some of the different underrepresented neighborhoods and groups out there. Like there isn't even really a framework or a mechanism currently in place to gather feedback from those voices. So there could be a couple intermediary steps just in figuring out a process to get to them. And I don't have any answers for that. Other than the only ideas I had was, kind of the door-to-door approach, like literally like, putting flyers on doorknobs or going to different churches, and talking to them, talking to these different communities on the ground level to see if there's any interest or not. And there is that process could be, a lot of unknown, unforeseeable things could happen as a result of doing that. So I'm not 100% confident about taking that approach.
Couple ideas on gathering, a nice spectrum at least. I mean, one thing would be to start by just taking the commission districts so that we are getting a smattering of people over town. And so even if someone qualifies as a part of a homeowner group or part of a church group or something like that, putting them into their commission district, just so we say, hey, you're representing this group, but you're also representing District 5 or whatever it might be. And then also if we don't have that filled out well, you should be able to reach out to the commissioners and they should be able to give you people in their commission district that are willing to come to some of these events. We do it for some of our public art selection panels. We just literally reach out to the county commissioner and say, hey, give us 6 people in your commission district that you might think would come show up at an art selection panel. And, we often get just regular old citizens. We don't get them stating, the loudest voice business owner or something like that you might get anyways from a selection group. So I think that's one way to kind of look at it and tackle it. Because I agree, we need more people than just the voices that we're going to hear anyways if we were to reach out. The second thing, I'm doing this with some planning work, is I'm going to do what's called a Jane Jacob with humongous neighborhood advocate in the 60s in New York about this human scale notion of city building. And so I'm doing this for a community on the east side of Athens because I think their voices were sort of drowned out on a project. Actually, and I don't want to say anything, Joseph's firm worked on this project, so I'm not saying anything negative. I know they tried really hard on it. But I'm doing this as a secondary thing just because of my planning background and something I want to be involved with. So I'm taking that to the community, and I'm going to have hopefully with the architect and with Smith Planning, get some contacts within that community to have them actually lead the talk. I don't want to go in there and be the person telling them what to do, but we're going to walk around and talk about, the community and try and get a better feel and some better input for the community. You could do some stuff like that with a tree walk, and maybe you have someone else lead it and you have some, tree professionals that are able to add some input to it. And so maybe you do that in a few locations that aren't, Cobham and Five Points, where you're going to be able to get people to volunteer anyways. But maybe you do that in some of the other neighborhoods, whether that's the east side that does have, does kind of get pushed aside a little bit, or North Athens, where I never hear any voices from and is, a lot lower income, a lot bigger Hispanic community. But try and get people actually just out having an enjoyable 1 hour walk. And maybe you just get people to sign up that way. And, you just throw it out there. Hey, we'd like to get some people from this area of town as representatives on this stakeholder group. Just another way to get some excitement and get some people actually walking around that you might not otherwise get through a panel. And then the last thing that I have access to that is underutilized, and it's really not to be utilized for this, but I can at least use some contacts in it, is there's the Neighborhood Notification Initiative. And it has throughout the county to send notifications out to for planning projects that come in. It's not the greatest system in the world, but it does have a contact list that we keep up with regularly. And so if need be, if we've got some other areas that are just underrepresented, I can reach out to those neighborhood contacts and ask if they have anyone in their neighborhood that might want to fill a spot on here or something like that. Just a few thoughts I have on getting some input.
I like a lot of those ideas, Mark, and it does seem to be like it's just my day to be the wet blanket. But I did just participate in a UGA study on tree canopies, and I am actually probably not the voice they want to hear, but I live in the neighborhood that they want to hear from. And I was the only person out of 40 people contacted that agreed to meet in person. So I think for the foreseeable future, when we can get, I love a tree walk. I love the Jane Jacobs walk. What a great idea. But the human contact that we all crave, I think we're going to have to figure out something beyond that, as to do something until we get back to that safely. And I kind of wondering about like engaging in like school, like getting teachers to help for like, I don't know how we could get the information from the school to the kids, to the parents, but anyways, those are the hurdles. Like the in-person thing, I think if we wait to do an in-person thing, it'll be 3 years before we can have a community consensus on how we should get started. So.
What's the potential of including a link to a questionnaire inserted into like the water bill? I know that the water business, gets information from Athens-Clarke County, their newsletter, their mailer. Just thoughts.
Yeah, I can reach out to them. I know they're pretty good about putting environmental stuff into those. I also see that like Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful is able to get stuff into those. So maybe Stacy would be a good connection to help us kind of figure that out. I think that's a quality idea right there.
I really like that idea.
Does anyone follow anyone in the government? Like, I don't follow anyone, but does anyone follow Kelly or somebody that could tweet out there? Is there any tweeting that happens in the government to give this ideas out there in the community?
A couple departments have Facebook pages. The planning department does not, but I know folks, I think it's the folks that have the education people, so stormwater, solid waste, public utilities. So it might be good to reach out to those. They are all part of a network that does a lot of the green school stuff. There's this green school committee who puts on the Green Life Expo and all that stuff. So I sit on that, but I don't really contribute a whole lot. I'm happy to reach out to them and see if we can promote something that way if we come up with a question or a link or something like that.
I would like to just say I really like the idea of putting something in a questionnaire in the water bill, because that process may be a little less biased. Like just the process of selecting how we, who we ask is in of itself creates a bias where, I mean, there would be a bias. It's a self-selecting bias. So whoever bothers to answer the questionnaire might be people who care a little more about trees maybe, or have an opinion about it one way or another. So it's hard not to have bias at all, but I think that would have the potential to gather a large amount of data without, it would streamline, and I think it's a great idea. Other thoughts about who to ask or how to ask them?
ACC has that newsletter that is always laying around in the lunchroom at the county. I could call them and see if they'll put it in.
You're talking about the accent? Okay.
And I guess I can call down to Board of Elections. I always work elections, and we were required to put up a lot of stuff for the state. I mean, we have a lot of signage, but I don't know if I'm allowed to add to that. So I can ask if I'm allowed to put a public notice up. So I don't know the answer to that.
They are conducting the census right now, and it's probably to do much with it, but I know they're out there in the community. The planning department's working with some folks to get census people counted.
So these all are excellent ideas, and it's pretty exciting to hear them. I think for now we'll send the questions out to the CTC. If you guys want to follow up in the directions that you've talked about, that would be great. I would be a little hesitant about sending this information out just yet, but maybe we can make preparations for that process. The last item on the agenda is, excuse me, my phone's ringing. It just distracted the crap out of me. The last item is this question of effectiveness, and this is where I come into sort of a direct conflict between the amount of time that I really want to spend in a policy process, which in some ways I feel like might be covering old ground. There may be merit in making a change to the single family residential requirements. But in so many ways, I don't feel like that is I don't have much skin in that game. For me, it seems like, I would be better served to focus on tree program elements like, talking about, ways to gather information from a strategic management approach for the management of community trees. So that's just where I am personally with this. When it comes to the ordinance, and once again, looking at some of this historic information, you can see where they had these ideas, and they were great ideas. But then I can't help but ask some of the questions about, especially with ordinance enforcement, about its actual effectiveness. Mark and I both have some ordinance enforcement authority, and we are both spread, realistically, we're both spread, the demands on our time is pretty, there's a lot of demand on our time. And so it just isn't realistic that we can go out and look at everything and enforce all the rules that are currently in the ordinance. It just isn't, it really isn't going to happen. And I know, speaking for myself, I won't speak for you, Mark, but speaking for myself, the best I can hope for is to pick some battles and try to get the word out that someone's watching. That's the very best I can do. There is no way that I can get around and address not only all of the development projects that might affect public properties, but also, you know, what private landowners may be doing, and, you know, that sort of thing. Like, you know, basically to the right of ways and other things like that. There's no way I can get around to it all. And even when I do, each and every single specific incident becomes a major time sink, to the point where I need an extremely good reason to move forward with it, because it requires me to coordinate with 3 or 4 other county agencies to be able to get anywhere. And so far, I haven't won any of those battles. So that's just where I'm coming from on it.
You guys, it's about to rain. I gotta go put the top up in my car, but I'll be right back.
So I know I kind of went down a rabbit hole a little bit with that. That's not directly connected to policy, other than, you know, if someone else is interested in chairing this committee, I would love to hear from you.
Yeah, no, I don't know if the same thing applies to me, but I kind of feel like I'm in that boat. However, I do feel like being one of the people who works with the code on a daily basis, you know, it's probably good for me to be involved. I don't know if I really want to be the chair of 2 of these subcommittees, quite honestly, but I'd be willing to support that person a lot and try and get them all the resources and information, and get connected to getting the processes rolling as best as possible if anyone else was interested in it. I don't feel too worried about the political side of it all that much, but I do feel like I am in a slightly odd position administering the code and then telling people what to do to change the code. That does seem a little weird.
Why do you not think it's going to be a huge process?
Why do I not think it's going to be? Oh, no, I'm just saying I think we're talking about tweaking it versus starting from scratch. That's all. I just thought that was going to be less of a process. It'll still be anything that wants this much input and this much change is going to be a bit of a effort. We're doing this with some stuff in the zoning code, and it's been a meeting every other week, and then we haven't even gotten into public input yet. So I think it'll be a lot. I just don't think it'll be as painful as the first time.
Well, if nobody else will do it, I'll do it. But does anybody else want to do it? Anybody?
If I had time, I would. I definitely would. I do feel passionate about certain elements about it, but I don't think I could devote the effort, the focus I think is needed to win. So I wouldn't want to play just to lose.
All right, I'll do it. Damn it. Okay, fine, I'll do it.
So, so do we want to go ahead and vote to approve a new chair for the policy committee?
Do I have to be a new chair for the whole committee? Because you do so well with keeping us focused and doing the agenda. Can I not just maybe take the lead on this one thing? Like a subcommittee?
I'm perfectly happy to help things moving forward. I just, you know, and I'm fine to be involved, and I do feel like we have a lot of resources and understanding about, you know, where things could go from here. And at the same time, I just have the reality of you know, it's the opportunity, right? Where do I focus my time? I quite honestly would rather focus my time on a strategic process and the collection of data and to formulating a you know, a 20-year strategic community forest management. And if there's a place in the policy committee for that, that's great. I think it could be. It's talked about the comprehensive plan. It's mentioned in the policy, but it isn't. It's never been sort of flushed out as something the community specifically wants. So I'm just interested in that progression from, you know, to creating the most functional community forestry program possible for the county as the forester. So I'm happy to serve as chair. I'm also equally happy to just participate and, you know, be of assistance where I'm able to.
So that's a yes, you'll stay chair, and then I can just do this one task? I couldn't really hear your answer. It was kind of all over the place.
Well, no, I'm throwing it out there, and I'm going to keep throwing it out there. I do want to step in and become chair of the council, but I'm not asking that necessarily for today or even next month or 6 months. I'm just throwing it out there for y'all to think about a little bit. In the meantime, I think there's plenty of good things for us to focus on, and this idea of sending out this sort of generalized questionnaire is a perfect opportunity to collect data, and it's well within my comfort zone. I'm happy to do that. And if we could get it out to thousands of people or tens of thousands of people, all the better. Although I don't have the ability to process tens of thousands of replies, right? So that could be a good problem to have, but I couldn't do that currently. I don't have the resources to do that currently.
I can handle the replies. I will do that.
Can I ask an unrelated question?
Oh, go ahead.
Rodney, did you submit your request to the commission for funding for the data that you needed to continue with the master plan?
Yeah, thank you, Mary, for asking. I have. I've been working diligently to produce some data, and I'm making very good progress in that. And so there's no need to make a request of the mayor and commission. At this point, I'm writing a grant, and the prospects for that grant are very, very good. And when the time is right, if things go well, I may be asking the tree council what resources it may be willing to contribute to that project. So I am moving forward with that.
Good. I've been encouraging commissioners to look for it and feel positive about the request. So now I'll stop bugging them about that.
Okay. Yeah. So it's actually.
I don't think they're waiting around for it, but.
Yeah. So at this point, it's not really being channeled through the mayor and commission. I'm not 100% sure, but as far as I know, everything right now lies on the management side and is really dependent on the outcome of the grant itself. Okay, we have 4 minutes left. Any other last thoughts before we move on or before we end the meeting?
So just to recap, next step here, Rodney, you're going to create a questionnaire that'll go out to the rest of the tree council?
That's correct. And so one of the problems of this type of information gathering is actually getting people to reply and respond. So anything you can do to help encourage fellow members to, you know, be prompt in sending back their replies and responses would be great, because then we can complete a better data set and engage in a better conversation.
Threaten to shame them if they haven't next CTC meeting. So do you need any help with those questionnaires? Do you want to send them to anybody on this committee to review that beforehand, or you feel comfortable?
I could send it to the committee first just to get everyone's feedback, see if there's any thoughts of something that might need to be tweaked or a better way to do it. And if once everybody says that looks good, I'll go ahead and send them out. All right. Well, this has been a really awesome conversation. I really appreciate everybody's participation and feedback on it. And I think I feel really good about the capacity, the increase in capacity of this policy committee to look at this type of a process more holistically. It's pretty exciting to me. So thank you.
Thank you, Rodney.
You all have a good afternoon.
Adios.
Mark, we're staying on the mic.
Yeah, it just dawned on me that my agenda is on. I bounce back and forth between my work VPN and my home laptop, which is what I'm on now. So I'm going to get off here for just a second, send that email to myself, and I'll be right back. So if anyone else comes on, tell them I'm coming right back.
I'll be right back too.
Okay.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, Seth. You're muted. Hello.
Is this education or did I get my times all wrong?
I thought this was going to be trees for tomorrow, but I actually have no idea because I didn't get the agenda. So I thought I'd just crash the meeting and see what was happening.
Hey, Rod, which committee is this?
This is the education committee. I just stayed on to let people know if, they showed up. I'm signing out for now.
Oh, so when is the trees for tomorrow? Is that 4?
I'm sorry, Nina. The trees for it's now a work group, and they met during the hour when the executive committee meeting met and the steering committee.
Oh, no. Okay.
And, I did send out some information to you.
Yeah, I read that.
Okay. So Phil's still the leader of the group, and he would be the person to talk about it. If we want to get together by email or something and have a kind of a work group discussion, we could.
Okay. Sounds good. I guess you guys carry on. Educate.
Stacy just sent an email saying she's having sign-on problems, but she's trying.
Okay. Let me try and pull up the agenda here. Let's give Stacy one more minute. I'm going to grab some water real quick. How are you doing today, Seth? I don't think. Ooh, looks like Stacy's here. Did you make it in, Stacy?
Hello?
Hello.
Hey, you guys can hear me. Hi. How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good. Sorry, I was having trouble getting in. I don't know why. It's weird. So I'm sorry I'm late.
No problem at all. I apologize for sending that email late to all of you. Hopefully, you guys were all well aware of things and knew to be here. Oh, great, Edith. Hello, Edith. Okay. I was able to look at the materials that Rodney has. I was not able to find much that we have. And had a good discussion with Rodney while I was over there getting stuff from his office. And so the majority of what we discussed was the fact that he kind of really wants to be involved with the materials that go out, but at the same time, he doesn't want to really be committed to being the main person who has to present any of them, which I think completely makes sense. And I was not trying to commit him to any of that. I was just trying to kind of find what he had. He led me toward a Dr. Gilman from the University of Florida, who has a lot of online materials available, which seems great. So I think what we need to do is maybe look through his treasure trove of materials in regards to not reinventing the wheel that we discussed last time. So if everyone could put it on their agenda as a homework assignment to check out Dr. Gilman at the University of Florida. He has fact sheets that have downloadable PDFs, and he's trying to share all of his knowledge as best I could tell from there and from what Rodney was saying. And I think if we need to update stuff, which I guess I still haven't confirmed that we definitely necessarily need to update stuff, I think he would be a very good resource. Do you know, Seth, if we were getting, if any of the items that the CTC normally passes out at fairs and things like that are from your office? I didn't necessarily see your office on there, but they look like materials that something like the Forestry Commission might be putting out. We can't hear you, Seth. Nope.
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
Well, Seth is he still talk? I don't know.
We can't hear you, Seth.
We can hear you, Seth. Okay, sounds good.
You're not muted, Stacey.
Sorry. So I just looked up this Dr. Gilman, and he's got a lot of videos, but they seem to be not necessarily for school age children. Did you find that, Mark, when you looked at that, or is there someplace else I need to go?
No, I thought this was more for like taking stuff to the Green Life Expo or something like that type of level. Rodney and I did have the discussion. This is an important point, I think, to bring up of what level we're looking at educating. And he said, even when you're talking to the public, you're probably wanting to teach things that are like an 8th grade level of materials, and then allowing people to kind of dig in further, or giving them the option to dig in further, but kind of shooting for that. So that's kind of what I was thinking. I hadn't read through a ton of Dr. Gilman stuff yet. I just got the chance to get over to Rodney's office late last week. So.
Okay. Yeah. And I totally agree with that. A lot of times, a lot of the materials that we create for Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful, we always sort of gear them towards, we actually always say a 4th grader, but just because that gives everybody that extra edge, but really kind of some of the basics, so that, it appeals to a larger audience. So I agree with that. But I guess I need to look through his website a little bit more and see if there are things like that.
So is the preference to use materials that are just from educational facilities, so they're pretty well vetted as far as the research and what they're saying? And
To answer your question, but Edith, Rodney really likes the way Dr. Gilman presents stuff, and he's used it in some of his presentations. And Dr. Gilman also is wanting to get this information out for free. So it was just one source that seemed like a good option, but we can definitely use other sources. So did you have any luck, Seth, getting back in? Yeah, try and call in if you can. That works. Does that help out a little bit, Edith, or did you have another source you were thinking of?
that does. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. That does. Stacy had made a recommendation during our last meeting that I follow up on the Environmental Educational Alliance of Georgia, and they had some good material. They offer memberships. Rodney said he didn't think that we were a member. I guess Pam Knox would know for sure because she would have cut the check.
I'm a member though, Edith.
Oh, hey, Stacy.
Hey, I'm a member, so that's good news. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, maybe you better speak to the benefits of belonging.
Well, I guess I would say my staff and one of my colleagues is very active because she does most of the education and outreach. That's Stacy Smith, and so she's real active with EEA. And so really, the benefits. I mean, they have I think that they may have 2 conferences a year where they bring members and teachers together to learn new lesson plans, to share ideas. So being a member allows you to go to what are instructional workshops. I used to go 15 years ago, I used to go every year, and then once my colleagues sort of took over the education component, I just remain a member, but I don't tend to go. She goes to everything. So but I think it's the sharing of information and the resources is the main benefit. Also, it helps. You guys know this is always really helpful to have a professional organization that you're affiliated with. And so for a lot of folks that do environmental education, this is like one of their main statewide, professional organizations. So in that way, it sort of connects them with other people that are doing the same thing around the state.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, sort of what you would think, but it's not as though they used to be a 1 staff or 2 staff office. So it's not like they come out and offer to do things. It's more connecting to the, they connect you to the resources.
Yeah, they did have an interesting link. It was Captain Planet, and they had some videos and instructional materials virtual for little ones. If we're looking at education for adults as well as children. I was thinking if we could, on our website or a Facebook page, if we could have a list of resources available, for teachers and people doing homeschooling, and we'd probably need to reach out to other community groups just to let them know that it's available.
Yeah, and Mark, I just pulled up a couple of his Dr. Gillen's fact sheets, I guess he calls them, maybe. Some of them, there's pruning and planting young trees and restoration pruning. And actually some of those are, they probably are above 8th grader, but I do think these would be kind of cool things to have to connect our website to folks who want to understand more, because there's diagrams and stuff in here. So that's always really helpful. It's not just verbiage.
Yeah.
So.
We always
Hey, this is Seth. Can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
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 All right. So all I was going to throw in there, so Dr. Gilman's stuff's awesome. He's probably behind Dr. Coder, the person I would trust the most to ask a tree question. But his stuff does get a little heady sometimes if you're talking about that 8th, 9th grade level. Gilman's stuff's a little in-depth sometimes, which is great. I think Stacy might be onto something with like linking to the website as far as like materials to hand out to the general public. Some of that stuff might be suitable. Some of it may be better for the website. I was going to mention that there on our website, gatrees.org, there's a bunch of like one-page we call them fact sheets, flyers, whatever. So a lot of one-pagers that are very simplistic, but they kind of get your brain thinking about other more in-depth questions. So if you go to our website and go to the resources under Urban Community Forestry, you'll find a bunch of one-pagers that are great for printing and handing out at events. Nothing like a trifold. We don't have anything like that on there. I hand out a lot of ISA pamphlets that are trifolds that have wonderful information, and they're geared towards homeowners. You can get packs of 50 of those, I think, for about $17. So they've got 30 or something different topics. So there's some options out there. That was it. That's all I was trying to get out on Peter Windward.
Hey, Seth, that's great. If we were to do something with the Georgia trees, is the best way to just link directly there, or can we put them on our website and give you guys credit? And can we print all that out if we were to take some to an event? Is all that kosher?
Yeah. However y'all would like to use it. It's all public domain, paid for with tax dollars. So you can link it, you can download it and repost it, you can hand it out. It's for public consumption. So however y'all would find the best use for it.
That's awesome. I think that would be really, really helpful. And, Mark, after we compile all of what we think are good sort of resources, we could easily simplify some of that and create our, felt like it was, too verbiage heavy or, I think that, compiling all this information and then maybe creating something from all that information might be the way to go.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. If y'all wanted to try to generate something that is, Community Tree Council, published by y'all, I would be happy to help with that process and you could put GFC's name on it to provide some legitimacy if y'all wanted to make your own documents.
Yeah, man, we know people, Seth. We'll become like famous.
Yeah, and so to that point, a lot of the stuff Rodney has, he's got a zip drive full of background stuff. He was a teacher at a school in Oregon for quite a while, and he is definitely interested in putting together the concepts of, maybe, and this would be some small amount of times a year, 2-3 times a year, quarterly at most, I suppose. And the thought would be that maybe he wouldn't do it quarterly. Maybe we would have like the ability to have a quarterly program, and maybe Rodney did 1 or 2 of them type talks. But he has, all these full presentations of all these projects, all these topics that, he could go into in depth. He taught classes on them, but he could go in depth and kind of pare it down for a 45-minute, 1-hour talk. He was discussing the idea that maybe one of the things this group could finally get to, and this would be, down the road, is similar to what other folks do, where, he would have a talk that would be for ISA credit. And so to do something like that, I think this goes in, this was getting into some of the stuff Lee was talking about for the professionals and for the community as to who we would kind of target. So Rodney is very protective of all the work he's done on those projects or all those topics. So he'd be happy to probably do a little bit of that, but it would be under the guise of either he does the topic or we do it with his information, giving him credit and probably him being there and being at least a part of the, the process of getting everything together. either that or we have some other outside folks. There's folks at the botanical gardens, having Seth come in and do a talk, one of the quarters, or I don't think you guys really want me doing one of the talks, but if it got to that point, I could do one of the talks, one of the quarters or something like that. So that's kind of where we got with a lot of the background info. And then the other thing he gave me that I'm hoping to scan and give back to him this week, and if I do that, I will share it with all of you, are information from the former education committee that was doing some of this. They were doing things that were ISA certified to have talks. And these are some pretty intensive, there's a binder full of some intensive information on some of these courses that former CTC members were putting on. So I don't know if their background was specific to trees or exactly where they came from, if this was like an educational component that had something to do with their jobs. I just don't know the former members on the council. But there was some really in-depth coursework that the folks were going into. And I was kind of talking to Rodney about the ability to maybe even just take some of those concepts and pare them down, so we could use that as a secondary source of some information, or a tertiary source, or fill in any gaps that we find from the stuff that Seth was sharing with us, the stuff from Dr. Gilman, or anything we might already have our hands on, or from ISA. So that's what I ended up digging up late last week, but I have not sort of sifted through it all yet.
Mark, I can't remember if we talked about this before, but Maureen O'Brien, who is still in town, I don't know if you've seen her name on some of that stuff. She was a former member, actually former chairperson for several years, but then was also very active on the education committee, and is works for the university. I think I don't think she retired yet, but she's like a wealth of knowledge, and she's like one of those people who, if we ever did want to have some other people talk about trees or go out, and like that's her jam. Like she does that so well, and she still does it with a lot of the schools around town. So she might just be a great resource to connect with. And, if you wanted to do a talk or a video of a tree planting or something, she's really, really good at it.
Yeah, that's great. I saw her name mentioned, so I think a lot of that may have come from her. So that connects a few more dots there. So yeah, definitely. Did you have some thoughts in that regard, Lee, to where you kind of wanted to take the community? I know I didn't send you that landscape stuff till late, so I don't know if you thought about that at all, but anywhere to take some of that information into the community?
I haven't talked to Jeannie yet. I did see your email. I'm not sure where to start. I think since I see Jeannie every week, I could start there and just ask her if she's open to someone, me, anybody coming in and just having a half an hour with them. I mean, I would run it by Rodney and get everything approved by Rodney and the committee, but I haven't asked yet.
Yeah, that's great. I would ask Jeannie and just see what she feels about all of that, because she would be the one to get some of those employees gathered and giving you that good audience. Do you think you would want to, if you started with ACC, would you want to work towards private companies at some point, or?
Sure, I'll be glad to do that. I feel really strongly about this, that if I could get to the people that are actually putting the trees in the ground, then I can make such a difference on how management goes later on. Because I see so many problems that result from the way the specific tree was planted, and so I want to get to the people that are putting the trees in the hole.
Great. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I totally understand that. More than a good share of the problems I see stem from someone doing something incorrect in its early stages that could be done well. And when I'm going out there doing my inspections, I know the last thing they want to do is move a tree a few feet, but if, they don't put light poles on the plans and then all of a sudden I go out there and there's a light pole right next to a tree. I just don't even know why in the field they thought, oh yeah, we'll just stick it right here because this is where it says on the plan. So if that information can be better disseminated amongst the groups, I think that's great. And Jeannie might have some contacts as well. I think that would be the other thing. I don't know if we have to. I'll ask the question if we, as a mayor and commission defined commission, have to get approval to go talk. I don't know why we would have to get approval to go talk to private groups. We're not, selling a service or anything like that. It's just community input. But let me ask that question just to make sure as going forward that I don't see why there would be any problem talking to the folks at landscape management who, Jeannie, who work under Jeannie, but going out into the community might just be an extra step that we just need to make sure we're doing all the right things with.
I can talk to Jeannie on Friday. I see her on Friday, but we've really got to get the material standardized and approved before we really go forward with this. But I can ask her just as a concept if she's open to it.
Great. All right, Stacy, I have on here, and I thought we discussed the possibility of you talking to Stacy Smith about older green school curriculum. Did you find anything?
Yeah, so after our last meeting, I did have Carlos go up into and he did find sort of the 2 tree lessons that I was talking about. And so those were materials used for when we did in-person, like classroom visits. And they're fairly basic. They're very elementary, they're just different. They're kind of like fun activities that teach kids about trees. So we did find the materials for those. Aside from that, when I talked to Stacy, she was like, there wasn't a lot there. She said there wasn't a ton. And so the answer is kind of like, no, she didn't find great stuff. So I think just looking at the 2 activities that we have, and then, starting to just kind of from scratch and look, there's got to be really good tree lessons out there. You know what I mean? It's just that we didn't have to do, KCCB had 2 under our in our hands, so we never really looked for more. So, but Mark, I did emphasize with her several times that you wanted to be involved and more involved. I made sure, and she said you kind of were, but I sort of just made it clear that like you were really trying to look for tree lessons and being more involved. So she's been making sure that you were on everything for the Green School Committee.
Mm-hmm.
So, but a lot of the lesson plans are online, so it's really just a matter of looking to see if there's just anything. So I didn't have the chance to go in and look at that, but they're all online. So
the 2 lessons you found, can you share those with me, with the group, some way?
Yeah, I could probably somehow, Mark, I could at least get them over to your office.
Cool.
And they have tangible items. They're things, they're like things that kids touch. And so, it's like I think I shared before, it may become something that we do a video of, using the resources. But I'd be happy to get those over to you. I can have Carlos or Stacy just get them over to your office. In every other day to the office. So
great. Yeah, I'm in every other day, but we're open upstairs from 8 to 12. So if you send someone over, have them come a little earlier.
Excellent. Maybe I'll have Stacy bring them over tomorrow then.
Great. And Edith, you started to discuss what you found with was it the Environmental Education of Georgia? I'm sorry, I don't have the name written down here. Did you have anything else going with that you wanted to follow up with that might help out?
There was a lot of material. I thought probably what I should do is just make a list of this and email it to everyone. What was available on each website. Some of it was geared towards more high school kids, and the Captain Planet, of course, was more elementary and middle school. All of it was free. There was only one site which asked for a donation, but that was not mandatory, of course. But it might be a good resource for folks that teach and parents. And I was wondering if we would, we could certainly put it on our website and Facebook page, but maybe partner with promotions to get the word out. I know, last year I wouldn't get up in the morning and think, I wonder what the Tree Council has on their educational website, so maybe neighborhood associations would need to know, and there'd be a way to reach, other community groups. Just to let them know this material's here, it's free. It can be used in the classroom or at home.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about the promotions group. I wonder if this whole big rebrand, redo of the website's going to come with a blast to get people sort of retuned to looking at the CTC's website, and having those resources available would give people more reason to come check it out. So I think that's a great question I will throw over to that group, because I think if we're going to go through the steps and take the time to get these resources available, we want them to be finding a captive audience and not just doing it to say we put it up on the website. All right. The last item I was looking at here, sorry, I'm trying to read this agenda at the same time. So one of the things, the 2A there under professional education that I talked with Rodney about was kind of this idea of creating an outline of the topics and of the groups that we would be wanting to get information out about, so that we're, covering the bases. Do you think we need a background outline to do that, or are we just going to kind of do this with some of the stuff that's at the forefront of our minds and that we see on other folks' sources? Does anyone have any thoughts on building that sort of outline or framework?
I'm not sure what you're asking, honestly.
Yeah, so the thought being that, there's things that a professional arborist would need to know, and there's things that a person that wanted to be active with their own personal yard would want to know, and general concepts that a child or a younger adult would want to know, and sort of divvying it up that way to be able to make sure we're comprehensively addressing topics as we go through and begin to educate folks? Or do we even need to go down that type of path, I guess? I just kind of saw it from the way Rodney had all of his files sort of put together. It seemed to make sense in my mind that maybe we would look at it at this comprehensive level to make sure we're it's not that we're not skipping anything. I guess the other component to it is that if we're going to be presenting stuff at a middle school age level to folks in the community, it'd be also good to say, hey, if this is something you're interested in and want to find out more, here's steps 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 to probably follow up with. I guess that's kind of the framework I saw it as, but I don't know if that's necessary or not.
Many of the websites I looked at it was broken down. If we did that, I think it would be redundant. Maybe not. Certainly the Captain Planet was for little kids, but when I looked at Trees Atlanta, it was geared towards community groups, individuals, and then little kids. And so were several of the others. So, I don't know if we did it that way, it would seem really just like a replication. Mark, you're muted, I think.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, not to sound really corny, but I mean, in my mind, it kind of even looks like a tree. You have these foundations as a trunk, and you have these larger concepts that are branches, and then you have things on those branches that are smaller branches and leaves. Just to me, it just the model would kind of look like that. But yeah, I mean, I'm not looking to duplicate a bunch of other folks' efforts. I think maybe it might just be something to keep in the back of our mind to make sure we're providing the whole picture, if that's the case.
Yeah.
Well, I think that is the end of the topics I had. Did anyone else come across anything in their research to add here? Other things for us to start looking at for next month? Anything like that?
Did I miss the number 4 from the agenda, the Making the Shade grant informational component? Did you have something on that, or did I miss it?
You didn't miss it. I was skipping it. I was just trying to slack off. I figured being 3:38, we're like 20 minutes past, the timeline I told you we would have a meeting for. Real quick, Seth, if you're still there with us, can you tell us anything about, I thought we kind of covered this a tiny bit in the full CTC meeting, but it seemed like it would be next year before another round would be out there. Is that correct? You could give us a little heads up on the timeline there.
Yeah, so I was planning on sending a follow-up email later today, but so I talked with my supervisor who kind of controls our grant monies last Friday. And unfortunately, Joan said we cannot bring Making the Shade back to Athens right this year, and probably not even next year, just due to a couple things. We've done those recent projects, and we have to be real careful keeping our books that we're stretching our money out throughout the region, throughout the entire state. The other issue is we are giving Rodney's office a grant to assist with an iTree eco study starting next summer. So that's going to be $11,000 more that were on the books that we've given in grants to the county. So unfortunately, the timeline looks a little stretched out for bringing and Making the Shade project back to Athens. Stacy, I did mention the whole video idea to try to sweeten the pot, and Joan did like that. She's just concerned about optics at the federal level when they audit us every year and our grant funding. So unfortunately, no good news there on the Making the Shade front.
Dang it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, obviously this is my home community, so I'm partial, but anyway, I'll keep on Joan about when we can expect it. I'm thinking, it'd be a couple of years now, but I'll lean on her some for us.
Great. We appreciate that insight. We'll just keep that on the back burner so we don't forget about it going forward, and hope that we can be part of it again in the not distant future. Any other wrapping up thoughts here? Any other pieces to take a look at for next month? I see a few tasks here from this work, and I'll send these minutes out and copy you guys on it. I'm sorry, I'm more of a spastic typer onto the agenda of minutes. I'm not great about keeping very specific word for word minutes. But I think there's some things we can all just kind of keep attacking at here. And like I was saying in the very beginning, I think this is a multi-month process before we're actually, getting to the point of rolling anything out. And especially with COVID still raging, in-person events are still big, but I would love to get some stuff to our promotions team so that website is great. And so when that thing's going live, we're able to kind of point people in the right direction and get people used to the fact that we're going to have resources available for them and be able to keep educating our local community. If we got nothing else, I think that's going to be a wrap on the Education Committee, and I really appreciate the things everyone found and some input today. So.
Hey, Mark. One last thing. I'm sorry. Just, so in terms of like Maureen O'Brien, like, is that, are you planning to reach out to her, or are you just sort of holding back for a minute?
I was going to hold back for just a minute and kind of see what I found, but I could reach out to her when the time's right. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah.
Well, cool. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Mark.
Have a great afternoon. Maybe it'll get rain on your trees. So.
Thanks, Mark.
See you guys.
Bye.